and loaded. Truth on my blade, every line's exploded. You swing your words, I counter with precision. Battle of reason, this is my mission. Raise your fist, let them know. No, raise your voice, let it blow. Woo! We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. Yeah. No fear, no chain, no treason. Woo! We clash our swords of reason. We clash our swords of reason.
Welcome everybody to Swords of Reason right here on the SpeakeaZy show every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays. And this is where logic meets passion. Today's debate prompt: white people are the most oppressed race in 2025 America. And today's debaters on the affirmative tonight, we have Marte Reyes, a former professional bodybuilder known for his pop culture commentary, political debates, and for openly documenting his walk with God. All right, you can find his YouTube channel linked in the description. And on the negative side, we have Connor, better known as Counterpoints. He runs two YouTube channels, Counterpoints 40K, covering Warhammer and sci-fi weapon breakdowns, and Counterpoints Politics as well, where he engages in online political debates and works towards building a center coalition. Both channels can be found in the description. And with that being said, we are going to get into the opening statements. We're going to start with the affirmative. So, Marte, whenever you're ready for your opening statement, and I know you had some things you wanted to present, so just let me know what you want to present and when, and I'll start the timer up with your voice.
I did. Go ahead and play the video, and then afterwards show the image.
Okay, so you'll have to play the video, but so I'll put it up
although
here.
You live here, I want you to know as mayor, you are not welcome here. And the day you move out of the city will be the day that I launch a parade celebrating the fact that you moved out of the city. Because you are not somebody who believes in coexistence. You're somebody who tries to preach it, but in fact, you do everything but that. So I just want to put that on the record.
We need ICE out of our city so that we can continue to focus on the strategies that have been working to drive violent crime down. And today, we are signing an executive order aimed at reining in this out-of-control administration. The order establishes ICE-free zones.
White people are racist. So I put this up because I really want any white person in the room to know up front that this is what we're dealing with, that it's not going to be this coddling of white tears and what that looks like. We're not going to discuss, oh, maybe some of us have worked it out. No, you're always going to be racist, actually. So even when you're on your path to trying to figure out how to be a better human being, because I believe that white people are born into not being human, like that actually, instead of people of color and black folks being dehumanized, that actually everyone is dehumanized off rip within white supremacy, that y'all are born into a life to not be human, and that's what y'all are taught to do, to be demons. So in this particular way, white people are all racist.
First of all, there's no such thing as white culture.
Exactly what is white culture?
There's no white culture.
They're not only trying to raise up minorities and make sure the playing field is even, they're trying to take down the white culture.
Okay, you can take this off and remove it. Mind you, that's being sold on Amazon as well, too. So right here we see a graph presented by Pew Research as well, too. DEI practices are racist towards white people. Not only is this a form of oppression, but it degrades education and the value of education. We can take this off the screen now, too. So when we think about politically moving forward, Brandon Johnson wants ICE-free zones, thus allowing illegal immigrants to live in his city, telling federal agents where they can't live. Counterpoints, I understand that you used to work in law enforcement. I did too. 13 plus years, different agencies. It's another conversation, neither here nor there. I know you're going to bring up your military background, all the other stuff. I don't want to hear it. We're just here for this debate. So back to this. Hey, I just want to make a proclamation. White people out there, I'm talking to you. Where have your balls gone? For the love of God, can we end the multiculturalism already? I don't like this. I don't feel safe. It makes me upset. White people and Asians have created the greatest technology, greatest societies, and the greatest economies, the greatest infrastructure in all of human history. You are now between 8 to 10% of the world's population, and you are importing infinity brown people into our culture and country, Europe included. You all brought into the globalist agenda, and you let women vote. Two of the biggest mistakes ever made, the greatest errors in modern society. White people used to be feared and more respected in culture, and on the global level, whites had the greatest empires in human history. Now they are getting arrested for sending memes by Muslim apologists through police arm of the state now. There's no rough edge anymore. Do you know how many white people get in my comments and tell me and say, oh my gosh, Marte, you say everything I wish I could say, but I can't because I'm white. Why not? Why? Literally, just say it. Just say what you gotta say. White silence is taking a hold of American society as a form of propagandized speech impression. So my identity is only here just to be an American. That's it, not black or anything else. You know what makes me upset is when I see ungrateful brown people getting on the internet and taking bold statements and talking crazy about my society that was established, built, and maintained by white people and white immigrants and Asian immigrants. And they want to talk down on our society and Western civilization as if they come from somewhere that's beautiful and prosperous and they have it all figured out. They've been murdering each other mercilessly and senselessly, having blood views for thousands of years. They haven't developed anything that they run from. Women are treated like animals in their culture, and we can go into that as well too. They have no rights. They're just barbaric animals. And then to think that they have the audacity to come tell white people where everybody wants to go, where white people live. Everybody wants to go where white people maintain society and civilization and infrastructure. Everybody does. Counterpoints. They come to your home, white people, and then they tell you, oh, you need to make things how we have it. They need you to change your rules for us. No, I'm starting to genuinely feel unsafe in society. You know who I do feel safe around? Kyle, Blake, Kevin, Christina, Chloe, Rebecca, Thomas. You know who I don't feel safe around? Somalians, categorically Venezuelan gangs that take over apartment buildings, large groups of Hispanic men that infiltrate this country, and don't speak a lick of English. White people, please, for the sake of Western civilization, grab your sacks, grab your nuts, and remember who the hell you are. Stop with the empathy, man. We've had enough of this. You know what energy we need? Like SpeakeaZy was playing? Boastful energy. Because I'm sick of it. White people, please. I don't want to see any more Mohammeds anywhere. We need a coalition against this. So, you know what I'm veering from culturally, and the reason why I veer from blacks? Your generation of white American men were told the last 80 years were a problem. People who look like you and live like you, they were part of the problem, and that all you need to do is get past racism together. And that if you could pull it off, if you could get past racism, if you could learn to live in a colorblind society, that all things would be better for all of us. And so you were the first generation raised with a truly post-racial mindset. And if you started to reach adulthood, you walked out, put your hand forward, and shake the hands of every other race, every other group, and every other religion that you let infiltrate this country, and you were immediately sucker punched by reality. Everybody else made it clear, though, that they're not striving for a post-racial society. They didn't want this at all. They want to fight over your corpse. They didn't want equality. They want your stuff. Right now, to be a white man in America, you have to be out loud, expressively okay with the idea that in 50 years, your entire lineage, your entire bloodline, your entire cultural history won't exist anymore. I'm not going to apologize for the achievements of white ancestors as a black man. I'm not going to apologize because white people build a world better than theirs. Whites took a land made of stick huts and bison chasers and turned it into a country that put a man on the fucking moon in less than 200 years. They made everything that these people are fleeing their homelands of thousands of years to come and deliver DoorDash to. I'll end with this. In a nation built in the melting pot ideal where immigrants historically assimilated into an American way of life, we now face a dangerous inversion. Newcomers demanding that we bend to their cultures, eroding the very fabric of our shared identity. Consider Dearborn, Michigan, home of America's largest Arab and American community, where cultural enclaves have led to resistance against traditional assimilation, with some rejecting core American frameworks in favor of maintaining distinct forms that challenge national unity. All of this has everything with Euro-American culture. In New York City, a beacon of diversity, immigration groups have formed insulated neighborhoods like those in Queens or Brooklyn, where demands for multilingual services, ethnic preferred policies, and cultural accommodations, from halal food mandates in schools to resistance against English primacy, shift the burden onto host society, prioritizing foreign traditions over integration. I'm about to end with this. This pattern repeats in cities like Minneapolis, Somali communities pushing for Sharia-inspired dispute resolutions, or Miami's Cuban enclaves influencing local politics to mirror homeland ideologies. All this is bad, by the way, counterpoints. All while Native American-born Americans are expected to adapt to their culture. Let us not fool ourselves with promises of reparations as a panacea for cultural grievances. Look at Canada's Indigenous peoples, where billions of settlements, apologies, and land returns have yielded and persisted socioeconomic stagnation with high poverty rates, health disparities, and limited advancement despite symbolic gestures, proving that the financial redress alone fails to foster true progress or integration. I have all the evidence and data on this on countryhealthratings.org. Also, today I argue for reclamation assimilation as the cornerstone of our republic, lest we surrender our culture to fragmentation and further cultural extermination. I concede my time.
All right. Thank you for that opening statement. I didn't want to interrupt your opening because we could hear you still what you were saying, but you might check on the StreamYard and switch to make sure you have the right mic selected. Because I think you were maybe on a distant mic there. It sounded like it wasn't the one in front of you.
Here we go. Can you hear me now?
That's perfect. Yep, that's better. But we still heard everything. That's the only reason I didn't interrupt you. So, but, you know what I mean?
Okay. You know what? Since I do have a little bit of time on my clock, let me go ahead and kind of repeat what I just said because I know you heard me.
Well,
so real quick,
we did hear you. We did hear you, Marte. We did hear you. We did hear you. I promise.
Loud and clear.
Yeah.
No counterpoints. You were yawning.
I didn't want to interrupt you.
You heard what I was saying.
I would have interrupted you though if we couldn't.
You know what? I can see my time. Go ahead.
I promise. But with that, we're gonna hand the mic over here to counterpoints for your opening statement, and whenever you're ready for that, I'll start the timer up with your voice. And again, thank you both for being here.
Yeah, so this was such a wild title that I didn't do much preparation, but basically I think that if we actually wanted to look at who's the most oppressed, we can look at the definition of keep someone in subservience and hardship, especially by the unjust exercise of authority. So we could talk about law enforcement, we could talk about redlining, we could talk about generational wealth, we could talk about access to mortgages, we could talk about the GI Bill, we could talk about segregation in the military, we could talk about all the things that generationally have impacted the African-American community or the Hispanic community or the Asian communities over the past several decades. But I'm assuming, just jumping ahead a little bit, that you're going to say, oh, well, that's all in the past. Well, I will make basically arguments that systems take time to modify and for people to overcome their systems. Also, I'm not a leftist. I'm not like a DEI, CRT, progressive, woke person. But I do think that reality is reality. So I think that the United States of America is a liberal, capital L liberal project based off of a constitution. It's a republic, meaning that's a representative democracy, and that we have the capacity to integrate many of the people that you are hostile to. When we take a look at your opening video and we take a look at the things that you're talking about, I'll just run it down kind of in response to your opener, okay? So a Muslim mayor saying that somebody is bigoted and shitty and he's happy when he'll move out of the neighborhood. What the fuck does that prove? I have no idea how that proves that white people are the most oppressed people in the world. We want ICE out of our cities so we can focus on ICE violence prevention policies that we know work, and we're going to create ICE-free zones. Okay, some woke dickhead in a blue state is preventing mass deportation. We could talk about the cruelties of deportation. Matter of fact, if you want to skip past the systemic argument, we could just talk about the way that law enforcement is conducted in this country. We could also talk about the way that the mass deportations have been conducted in this country, effectively violating the Fourth Amendment of the United States. As a constitutionalist, as a Republican, somebody who believes in a republic, violating the Constitution pisses me off. White people are racist. This is like a black lady from 10 years ago. I've been seeing this fat lady with a fucking fupa with her dumbass fucking PayPal for a decade. So the fact that you're bringing it up like this is a common sentiment in the black community is some random fat sociological degree having weirdo freak asking for a bunch of like white Karens to donate to her PayPal. The fact that you're acting like that is the average black person through your intro, I think is fucking crazy. Now, when it comes to white culture, once again, I'm not a leftist. I think there is white culture. the same way that black people were brought over from various parts of Africa, thrown into a melting pot of the United States of America, and had to create a new culture that involved new language, new religion, new customs, and new traditions. I think Northern Europeans and Mediterranean Europeans immigrated to the United States, and they had to give up their Italian heritage. They had to give up their Irish heritage. They had to give up these things, and they created white culture. I agree that American culture as a umbrella over the black culture, over the white culture, over the Hispanic culture has been a force for good. And many of the things that you valorize about the United States of America, I probably valorize as well. When you say end multiculturalism, we would have to be specific about it. I don't think Mexicans need to stop making tacos. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite things is a authentic Mexican restaurant I just went on a date with my wife to recently. That was phenomenal. I don't want people to give up their food. I don't want people to give up their religion either. Central and South Americans are typically Catholic. They don't need to convert to Protestantism in order to be more assimilated with the Northern European white culture, which is predominantly Protestant. That's a very silly thing to think is necessary in order for the American project to proceed. Whites have had the greatest empires in history. That's true. But empires come with violence and crime and authoritarianism and rape and murder and sacking of cities and all this bullshit. And we should be honest about our history. So if we look at the colonialism of the Spanish in the Americas, we should say, yeah, maybe Christianity is great. Maybe the new American world is great. Maybe, the world as it is right now is amazing for all of its technology. But also there was some fucked up shit that happened during the colonial period. If we look at the transatlantic slave trade, we don't have to excuse all the fucked up barbaric violence that was necessary in order to make the transatlantic slave trade. We can just go, yeah, that's fucked up. But it was a few hundred years ago. We're trying to get over it now. You also brought up that women are just cattle in rival societies. Okay. What does women being oppressed in the Middle East and North Africa have to do with whether or not white people are the most oppressed in the United States of America? You're saying that, oh, well, we're importing all these shitty third world cultures and then they're not integrated. I'm an integrationist. I want people to integrate. I want them to, number one, care about the constitutional republic of the United States before they even get here. Number two, I want them to be forced to learn English. That way they can integrate into our society. Number three, I don't think that we should bring over so many people so quickly that we create the ethno-religious enclaves that you're talking about. Your hostility, I hate jihadist terrorism, just like anybody else. I hate jihadist terrorism. I think liberals and progressives and lefties are blind to jihadist terrorism, but I also think your hostility to Muslims is probably overblown. 99% of Muslims are chill, decent people who believe in God, the last day, doing good works, and that Muhammad is God's messenger. Muhammad's kind of a jerk, peace be upon him, but at the same time, they're not necessarily trying to decapitate you. You brought up that liberal colorblind society is what we were indoctrinated to in the 90s and thousands. I wish we could get to that. I wish we could get to the American primary identity. We don't care if you're white or black, you're American first. I would love to get to that. But there's a whole history of grievance that we're going to have to address, regardless of whether or not you like it. I think that's almost it. Because the truth is that, we're going to get into Sharia law, we're going to get into Cuban ethno-religious enclaves, but I can leave that for the open. Oh, sorry, final point. If we look by any metric of academic achievement, lifespan, health outcomes, education, IQ, incarceration rates, any of that shit, it's going to be pretty clear that Jews and Asians are going to be at the top, whites are going to be a close second, Hispanics are going to be slightly behind whites, and then blacks are going to be at the far bottom. So once again, if we look at any stat of quality of life in America, whites are second or third best within our own society. So saying that we're oppressed, I think is an absurd statement. And with that, I'll yield the remainder of my time.
All right. Thank you for that opening statement, Counterpoints. And with that, we are going to get over to the 5-minute uninterrupted rebuttal. We're going to hand the mic back to Marte. So, Marte, whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
It's funny you say a couple things, but yet you don't address a lot that's in my opening statement. Case in point, you said that women are treated like cattle. Nor did I even mount that or utter that. That never left my mouth. What I said is how they're treated. I didn't say like cattle. Second of all, you said, I like, integration. And you said, that's what I want them to do. I want them to do this. That's not what's happening right now. They are not integrating in our society. Secondly, you say, what does this have to do in Dearborn, Michigan, when the mayor, Muhammad, whatever his name is saying that I need a white Christian to be escorted out of the city with a parade. Right now, this is being a semblance of what is to come. If we see this, we can look at Europe as an example of what's happening. So when you talk about a hatred towards Muslim ideals and things like this, a further provocation of people integrating into society in mass, unchecked, with no checks and balances, well, insert the UK, look what's happening right there. So we also see that too. We can talk about law enforcement too, as well too. Being the fact that I could bring up FBI stats, the latest that I could show you too, and also put this in the chat so we can bring up on the screen that, race, as far as races, blacks kill blacks, more than whites kill blacks, and whites kill whites more than anybody. Interracial violence is really high. But if you really look at these stats, whites are killed more by blacks, even though blacks make up a minority of most of the populations that we see. So that is also happening too. So when you say, what does any of this shit have to do with what I'm talking about? We're talking about culture. We're talking about the Hollywood race swapping. We're talking about everything else. Matter of fact, this is covert racism. This is what the plantation owners have done to the slaves. What they're doing in Hollywood right now, they're giving scraps and leftovers. Notice how it's only the black characters who are given scraps and leftovers, and the main white characters are saying, here you go. Oh no, you poor thing. Black people, do you want a chance to play the main character? You can pretend to be white for a while. To me, that's what's happening right now. And also, this is also debasing white culture as well, too. Anytime I can go out and be racist towards white people, and that's okay. Mexicans, Hispanics, and everybody else can do this. That's also cultural oppression. Whites, they can't do this. I can open up a black-owned barber shop. Let's see you try to open up a white-owned barber shop and see if that white-owned on there. See if that flies. This doesn't happen. Matter of fact, we can even look at other institutions, the NAACP. Think about it like this, if you will, counterpoints. The National Advancement of White People. Yeah, God, this is crazy. I can go to lengths at how much whites can't talk about this. You've never addressed the white silence that I brought up in my opening statement. That's the reason why I'm here talking, because if you switch places with me, you would be called a racist. Matter of fact, I can say I have pride in my race and all this other shit. And you can vote, and you can call back to history and say, well, because of the plan, all this other slavery stuff, we're in 2025. That's what the prompt says. Let's stick to the generation that we're in right now. According to this generation, you can't have any pride in your race. You can't even talk about white history because that's being washed down and revised in history, in colleges, in institutions. Matter of fact, I can point to the demographic that's debasing your culture as we talk about this. There are white liberal women. Yes, that's very distinct. And I'm honing in on a special subset of people. I know you're not a liberal. Nobody cares about that right now. You could be a Republican, a staunch Republican, in advocating for your position right now. What I'm talking about is society, not you. We're talking about a societal norm that's happening right now. If I say, we'll even say salt and crackers, if I call you that right now, that's perfectly fine. But if you do the inverse of that, oh, channel banned, all bad, this is bad. Matter of fact, white oppression happens in the black communities. If I speak with good grammatical precision and enunciate my words and speak grammatically correct, I'm now talking white, and now I'm being talked down on, oh, that has to be weeded out of black culture because now I want to be white. That's being degraded as well in black culture. So this pervasive ideology of white oppression doesn't just happen institutionally. This is happening culturally in media, in movies, as Thor, matter of fact, Heimdall, he was white in the comics. If we're talking about this, Ariel, the Little Mermaid, is now being swiped out for being white. Blacks are now being handed leftover characters. Matter of fact, there's a solution I can give. Why not give original characters to everybody else? But guess what this is doing? This is undermining white culture. Now with critical race theory, that wasn't the video from back in the day. This is currently happening right now in mass, and it's being produced as well too. You haven't addressed the DEI issues as well too. Matter of fact, I've yet to hear a solid argument against anything I've ever uttered. Let me just concede my time because I'm really wanting to get into these arguments.
All right. Thank you for that rebuttal, Marte. And with that, we're going to hand the mic back over to Counterpoints for your uninterrupted 5-minute rebuttal. And whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Yeah. So I think the reason why you probably haven't heard a specific rebuttal to your arguments is because you've given me 20 of them simultaneously. So when we move into the open, I would actually love it if we like picked one, stuck with it for 10 or 15 minutes, picked another one, stuck with it for 10 or 15 minutes, just so we don't have to just so we don't have to jump back and forth between different topics. But just to, respond to what you've said so far in your response, integration is not what's happening right now. I live in Florida. We're probably the future of what America looks like, where we're going to have a white plurality, a Northern European plurality, a Hispanic plurality. We're probably going to keep Black folk around 10%. We're probably going to keep Asians around 5%, including Muslims. And integration happens all the time, especially in Central Florida. We have every race, creed, and color running around at the parks, and everybody seems to get along relatively well. Not just that, but effectively, like when it comes to Hispanic folk in particular, in law enforcement, just as an example, probably 2/3 of my law enforcement class had Hispanic last names. Only 2 of them spoke Spanish. So they're all a bunch of like anglicized pop culture, Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift listening, effectively whiteified Hispanic people who are joining law enforcement, and they don't even speak their mother tongue. So integration is absolutely happening all the time. In reference to the UK, look at what's happening there. Listen, once again, I hate jihadist terrorism as much as the next person. I think that most liberals and progressives are blind to it. But the UK is not this like anarchic shithole where Pakistanis and Palestinians are running around just raping and murdering everybody. They have a 90% less homicide rate than us. They have the like rape gangs, the grooming gangs are getting broken up. We could talk about the issues with there, but I'm probably going to agree with 90% of your criticisms that the UK police were too sensitive to cultures that were coming in. And as a result, they ignored effectively girls who were in the foster system being groomed and raped by racist Pakistani gangs that were racist against white people. We're probably just going to agree. And I think that those people should be incarcerated. And I think anybody who isn't sympathetic to them should be incarcerated. And I think that anybody who's a peaceful, law-abiding citizen from that community should be integrated intentionally through language and legal classes and public education, et cetera, et cetera. You're right that I probably couldn't own a white-owned barbershop and make that part of the marketing strategy now. Maybe in a century when whites are a plurality, you could absolutely do that because it's just going to be a statement about cultural affinity. So I don't take these things as like, you're talking about white silence. I would say that probably most white people, if you are chill as an ethno-religious minority, an immigrant to the country, if you want to contribute to the economy, if you want to contribute to society, if you're good to your kids, if you pay your taxes, you work your job, most white people don't give a shit. This is why this is relegated to online schizophrenic dissident right-wing circles. This is why you guys are trying to infect the mainstream narrative and trying to make it more racialized and tribalized. You said that you don't want to be a Black American. You don't want to be a mixed race American. You just want to be an American. I'm probably a partner in that project. But what I don't like is I don't like the unnecessary hostility towards other people. I don't like the fact that in order to achieve your goals, we have to sweep the crimes of white history. I don't like that we have to freak out about pop culture bullshit because, to be honest, yeah, Heimdall's Black. He was played by Idris Elba. Idris Elba is a phenomenal actor. So is it a little weird that the pagan Aryan Norse mythology was co-opted and multi-racialized? Yeah, it's a little weird. But did Idris Elba kick ass in the fucking role? Abso-fucking-lutely. I loved Idris Elba in that role. Same thing with, what is it? Zendaya playing Mary Jane. Zendaya's hot. So yeah, like I want to see gingers every now and then. I want to see redheads get their representation too. But this isn't an existential crisis. This isn't indications. Idris Elba getting a Marvel movie role is not indications of my imminent dispossession of political power and genocide. And the project that we're working towards should be more collaborative, that it should be hostile. especially when it comes to Hispanics, which are probably 95% of the people who come into this country.
All right. Thank you for that rebuttal. Great rebuttals from both sides. Before we move into the open hour of back and forth, let me just talk to the audience real quick. If you're watching right now, okay, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and subscribe to tonight's debaters. Their links are in the description. All right. And we host all kinds of debates here. It's politics, culture, ethics, internet topics. We've even had video game debates here. Okay. So literally anything. If you enjoy the format, make sure you stay locked in and sub up. Also, a reminder for the live chat. After the closing statements, we will be doing a 30-minute Q&A. I'll drop the live Q&A is actually already dropped there. So if you want to get your questions in, put them in there. But the super chats, PayPals, Cash Apps, these will get the priority. And if they fill up the whole 30 minutes, you may not get your question answered. So if you want to get it guaranteed answered, send it through a super chat. And finally, thank you to both of our debaters for being here tonight and bringing their ideas to the arena. All right. And whenever one of you is ready to open up the back and forth here, I will start the timer up with your voice. And again, thank you both.
Yes, I'm ready to get into this right now. First of all, counterpoints, I want to thank you for actually contending with the argument, or at least attempting to. And then SpeakeaZy, I didn't say this in the intro, I appreciate you hosting this debate and letting me up on the panel. Let's get into this right now. So once again, you mischaracterized something as well, too. You did this twice already, but I don't want to point out the previous 2 times. Let's get into this time. When you talked about Hollywood and how this isn't an existential crisis or anything, remember what I said about us getting leftovers and kind of scraps and then being sold or unoriginal characters formerly portrayed by white people. To me, I'm just like, how is this not reverse racism? Not once addressed this. You just said, oh, no, it's not happening. Thus proving my whole point that even though it's happening, you bought into this and saying, oh, you know what? It's not happening. It's not a big thing, even though we have to eat scraps again, thus living on a cultural plantation still. Haven't even once reconciled this. I'm still waiting for reconciliation on that.
Yeah, can we start with that and stick with that for a second?
Yeah, let's stick to this topic.
Yeah, so let's stick with pop culture for a minute. So Blade, is Blade a tokenized character for Black America?
I can say that longevity has something to do with this. I think that if it happens a long time under the guise of being bought into something over a period of time, I can then be bought and sold an idea under the guise of saying, oh, maybe people were born into this generation where they were, they didn't realize Blade used to be white. Yeah, that can happen all the time.
Was Blade white?
I'm just saying, I'm giving you a hypothetical. If Blade was white, they can be bought into this. Had this cultural expression of a black vampire existed for a very long time. Let's say that Blade was white. This generation doesn't even remember the Hogan's Heroes or any of that stuff. If Hogan's Heroes were black, they would have never known this. And we do a revamp of this of a black rendition. They'd be like, oh, okay, this is a cool show. They would have never known the swap out would have happened. Thus Blade in the hypothetical. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm poking at, number one, I'm just trying to point out that Wesley Snipes is a personal hero of mine, and I love Blade, and I don't feel like Blade was scraps to the Black community. I feel that was an authentically, earnestly told story that was just damn cool, and I wish that it was, more of that stuff was done. Same thing with like Will Smith. Will Smith's whole arc with like Men in Black and Independence Day and all that kind of stuff. What was that, like Black tokenism? Was that scraps?
You're talking about characters that were started out being black and never picked up the scraps or leftovers of a white image or character. Now what we're doing is we're doing race swapping. Has Will Smith swapped a race out with another Men in Black person?
We haven't even gotten that far. I'm just trying to make sure that people
that's
are
where we're
aware
at right now. Counterpoints. I'm talking about race swapping. You're talking about like black characters being tokenized. Let's get to the race swapping, and that's my whole prime issue right now. Is that races are being swapped in real time with characters. Matter of fact, Snow White, they've even rumored to talk about this being a black character. Her name is Snow White, skin white as snow. This can happen in real time, yet you would never have an argument against this. This is happening before our eyes, and people are buying this part and parcel. And this is also eradication of white historical culture. This is a European ideal. This has been sold to the US as far as an ideal. And now all of a sudden we're warping culture, like immigration comes in and warps our culture, that we may not even see the same ideals in 60 years from now.
I don't even think I've said anything yet. I think I've asked you about 2 black actors and whether or not you were aware of them. Okay, so I'm still digging into this a little bit.
I'm on the race swapping. You're on 2 original black characters. I'm talking about unoriginal characters as being black, taking white counterparts as scraps and leftovers. That's where I'm at right now.
So let's get there. So one of the suggestions that you had, though, which I think is pertinent to the conversation, is directly addressing something that you said, is that you said that race swapping is effectively throwing black American scraps, insulting white Americans by diluting and minimizing their culture, et cetera, et cetera. I'll just go ahead and forward the argument instead of asking you questions. So there was this movie that was recently released, and I think it was called like The Woman King or something like that. Totally dumbass movie. I hated it, historically inaccurate, et cetera, et cetera. And it was about the female warriors of Benin, played by, I think, Viola Davis. And I think it bombed at the box office as well. That was an original black story with a powerful black female lead, et cetera, et cetera. But what ended up happening was, because, let's face it, black folk are only 13% of the population, they were not enough in order to get this movie to be commercially successful. And so I think that it's entirely possible for new black characters to be, created and have a broad appeal, but they're going to have to be part of a broader picture. It's not always going to be tokenization. And then when it comes to race swaps, I guess I could just say, like, it's not, I know that you're not going to like this, but it's not existential. But yeah, is there a part of me where Snow White is a Hispanic girl and she's Germanic and Argentinian, but she's a little swarthy, and I find that weird? Yeah, sure. Heimdall being an Aryan, a Aryan Norse god, and him being a black gentleman, is that a little weird? Yeah, sure. But what I find richer is like the thematic depth of the art. I don't think we're here necessarily to debate like the thematic depth of Marvel, but the reason why I'm going to show my kids that art in the future is because Heimdall is still a noble character. He's still self-sacrificial. He's still intelligent. He's still humorous. He's still this, he's still that. And so like the overall arching of the themes, what I care more in reference to art and media is, number one, is it good? Number two, are these themes that are worth engaging with? Number three, if it's a children's movie or a teenage movie, is this something that I want to show my kids? And I'll tell you what I'm definitely not going to do. What I'm definitely not going to do is I'm definitely not going to show my kids Thor, and I'm going to be like, oh, hey, did you know Heimdall was white? Did you know that Idris Elba stole a white man's role? Like, what kind of fucking racial antagonist bullshit am I trying to prop up right there? Like, what the fuck are we talking about here?
So, okay. Let me contend with this right now. To me, I don't really think that you even contended with that. Actually bolstered my point by mentioning The Woman King. I actually wrote a book on this called The Female Warrior Fallacy. I've been talking about wrapping this up for about a year and a half now, writing this book, still working on it right now. Anyways, we can get into that later. But here's the thing, though. When you brought that up,
I'd love to dig into that.
Was fabricated and brought on black people. That never happened. You can say it's original. It's an original fallacy. So that right there proves my point even more. If you're going to give us scraps and you're going to feed us lies now, you still don't really have a proven point. When you're offering nothing but scraps and now lies on top of that too. When you're using revisionist history to bolster black communities and say, this is original. Here, not only have I offered, have the scraps of former white characters, now you've offered to the table Woman King. Here you go. Revisionist history, things that never happened for 500, Alex. So this is happening in the inverse in white communities and also white colleges. They're revising history and telling whites to demonize themselves. They're the oppressors and everything else. You should hate yourself. We see this in media all the time. This propaganda is all over TikTok of whites saying this. And matter of fact, let's go ahead and conflate this with movies. This is also being seeded in media and movies for whites to hate themselves. Whites are no longer empowered in media anymore because they can't do this. White silence has also pervaded the media when it comes to characters and everything else. No, if there's a white character and he's somewhat proud of his character, that'll never happen. Matter of fact, it's eradicated from media and everywhere else that you could see. Matter of fact, point to a movie where a a guy says, you know what, I'm happy I'm Caucasian, you know, and I'm great, I'm happy because I come from European heritage, will never freaking happen. And the reason why it can't happen is because of white silence that happens in media and television. And the reason why you can say these things like, you know what, I'll never tell my children that this is just hatred and, you know, he used to be this and that. Well, actually, you're buying into the narrative that I'm espousing the first time because they're using revisionist history. If you never clear up the history for your kids, they're bought into lies in the future. And this is what we propagate. And you're doing the same damn thing right now during this debate and ensuring that your kids are bought into lies in the past, such as the woman king who brought up and saying, no, this character, you know, I'm never going to bring up the fact that they're really white or anything like that. And guess what happens? It erodes history. And over time, 60 years from now, if you sit in front of your kids and tell them lies from the history or lies from revisionist tales enough, now all of a sudden we have a different America and different culture in media and movies than we had before. And guess what? Movies are extremely powerful. People are emboldened. Matter of fact, Rosewood came out and people wanted to burn cities down when that came out. This is powerful, and also narratives that we give to populations to seed our communities with ideals. Now we're ruining these ideals and we're telling whites to be ashamed of themselves because we're eradicating them from cinematic media and movies and everywhere else.
Okay. We do agree that there were female warriors in the slave kingdom of Benin, though, right? That's factually true.
I wouldn't call them warriors. I wrote a whole book. We can get into this. I'm not sure you want to. This is like a
bodyguard.
What's that?
A king's bodyguard, an armed concubine bodyguard.
You realize why they were bodyguards, right? The reason why they were bodyguards is because when they had male bodyguards, they tend to have infidelity that happens. So in order to eradicate infidelity, they turned them into women. And matter of fact, they weren't even good at that. These women weren't even good bodyguards. They were just proven to show that it was like a show of force. And all of this was, matter of fact, you were an officer just like I was. All this was is just officer presence at the most. It wasn't a really effective tool. This was just a show of force and nothing more, because when they got into it, they didn't really prove the test of time. They really weren't good warriors. All they were was just staving off infidelity against the wife. That's the only reason why, and I wouldn't even call them warriors. That's why I would debunk all this.
Okay. No, shit. If you want to attack the trope of the warrior females of Benin, I mean, have at it. I'm perfectly fine with it.
I mean, this is my staple. I don't want to go into
this. You've talked for a while, so I would like an opportunity. I would like an opportunity to talk for a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
The reason why I'm bringing this stuff up, though, okay, is because number one, we're talking about whether or not whites are more oppressed in society. I do understand stories have power, but I don't feel like your perception of stories are fully correct. So when we come to like pop culture, I think what we're really trying to reinforce is we're trying to reinforce multi-ethno-religious, multicultural liberalism, probably colorblind liberalism to a degree. If you go into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is obviously very popular over the past couple of decades, you got Nick Fury. He's a badass. He's a hero. I think he was race swapped. You got Heimdall. He was race swapped.
He was.
You got, female, you got Black Widow, who's like this badass female super spy. You got her own spin-off movie that's not as popular as the male stuff. But like white men are still like front and center. Captain Steve Rogers is still like probably one of the Captain Rogers, and not just that, but Tony Stark are probably like the thematic heart of the Marvel Cinematic Universe all the way through Endgame. And so I still think there's plenty of like white male straight heroes that are even within like the progress, if you want to call it like goy slop, it's still there. And then not just that, there are good racial stories told. As an example, a recent example, Devotion. Devotion was a movie set in the Korean War where it's effectively the first Black naval aviator. This is a true story. He becomes boys with his wingman, despite all the racism that was common at the time. The racism that he faced was well documented. And what ended up happening was this Black naval aviator was providing close air support during the Chosin Reservoir. He was shot down, and his white wingman, who had come to love him as a brother over the years of service, actually crashed his plane intentionally, trying to save his brother from a different race, and then evacuated his corpse because the Black gentleman unfortunately ended up dying. So like I agree with you that there's slop all over the place. I agree with you that some of the the race swaps are uncomfortable, but I also think that there's beautiful stories here, and you're kind of like missing them.
No, I'm not missing any of that. And the reason why I'm saying that this is really bad, and I'm going to demonstrate this for you right now. I grew up in a black household. But the problem with the black household that we grew up in during that time is I saw a photo of Jesus in dreadlocks on my wall. Kid you, shit you not, this happened, right? And then when we look back at history that's being revised, religions being revised by race, everything else is being revised. When we talk about, I would say Metatron's had a channel on this. When we talk about the Egyptians, Jada Pinkett had a special on this saying that the Egyptians were black. No, maybe 2% sub-Saharan African, but we're bought into this. And this is integrating into our classrooms and kids' studies and everything like that. Guess what's happening? This is weeding out white culture and revising history. Once you've never actually contended with this argument about revisionist history, which is happening in real time. And then not once did I say that we're whitewashing, we're eliminating white atrocities that happen. Not once did I even utter that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is revising history is to where it never happened. And then blacks were, matter of fact, there's a whole movement right now saying that Benjamin Franklin was black, believe it or not. And believe it or not, with the way that culture is going right now, kids are going to be taught that Benjamin Franklin was black 60 years from now, the way that things are going right now. You may say that this is ineffective as far as kids, but it is.
We live in the information age. So for instance, like we know Cleopatra was a
Yet flat earthers exist and we live in a free agent age.
So hold on.
Right.
Cleopatra was a Ptolemy. She's of Macedonian descent. We know that the Egyptians are North African and they're ethno-religiously different than sub-Saharan Africans. And arguably, the Africans, the darker skinned Africans who ruled Egypt very temporarily, were the Nubians. And we know this, like historically, and they only ruled like they were only 2 pharaohs out of hundreds or thousands of years of history. So all of this stuff, like at least as far as I'm concerned, Jada Pinkett Smith is a dumbass who should not have been given a Netflix series. But I'm not going to go around finding every single dumbass celebrity with an axe to grind when the good information is not only still out there, it's still being taught at the college level. I mean, I went to college maybe 10 years ago now, so maybe it's been wokeified since. But, when I went to my West African history class, they weren't teaching us, the whites, they came here and raped and murdered everybody. And as a result, that's why Africa was fucked up. What they actually taught was the historical process of colonization, where do you know how African slaves were mostly sold in the west coast of Africa? Like, do you think like the white people with nets went into the heart of the continent and just started randomly kidnapping people?
And we can get into this as well too. I mean, here's the
we're
thing.
probably going to agree, but if you want to elucidate it, please go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll even give you a hypothetical. Let's say that I was on a slave ship and I wanted a bunch of blacks. I would never use guns or ammo or any kind of nomenclature to do this. What I would do is I would talk to the black people themselves and say, hey, listen, you're big and strong. I need you to rally up these other people and do this. Matter of fact, we're going to give you the best technology of the time, and it was the gun, right? So when we have this gun, we're going to say, okay, this is the best tech that we have. We're going to have you take these other blacks. I already fully know well how this happened. And matter of fact, this leads to like the whole Warrior King. I think it's the Woman King thing and all that other stuff.
Yeah, Benin was one of the largest.
I can't even concede this
in West Africa.
I can't even concede this. So here's the thing, though. That doesn't contend with any of my points as far as revisionist history when we talk about the culture. And our kids are eating this up in schools. All this is being revised before our eyes. Whites are actually being taught in classroom that in some semblances, in some cases, I can give you 3 case studies of where they're taught that they should dislike themselves and they're inherently racist upon birth. Whites are inherently racist upon birth. This is being told in classrooms and everywhere else. And you're talking about white academia being woke? No, this goes down to the elementary level as well, too. This is being taught all throughout. So this is eradication of white culture.
So let me tell you my solution on the pop culture front, and then maybe we can move into education and we can talk about solutions. Okay, because this is actually it actually is interesting. So for me, what seems like has happened over the past decade is I would say that woke peaked. Okay, in my opinion, because they did obnoxious shit. They did obnoxious shit like the Woman King. They lost a shitload of cash. They did things like race swapping with Ariel and all these live action adaptations. I'm pretty sure they broke even or lost money on some of these things. And so as a result, like woke has kind of like, hit its crest. And not just that, when you look at pop culture now, they're bringing things back like, I don't know, white, straight, male action heroes being the unapologetic protagonists. And I just mean like, I see Glenn Powell commercials every other day, and he's a white man with blonde hair and blue eyes. And we also see Sydney Sweeney with her huge tatas, and she's blonde with blue eyes. It's shifted a little bit. Even the Barbie movie, which is one of the most feminist movies of the past decade, ultimately made a critique of, the masculine, how masculine society is bad for men, but also like the ultra feminist society is bad for men as well. So like things are kind of like moving, I would say, in a more productive direction. And so when it comes to pop culture, don't watch the bad shit, reward the good stuff with your money. And it seems like this is getting balanced out in recent times. But it seems like you still think that we're in like a woke deluge.
No, this isn't happening. Matter of fact, you've traded out one thing that's subversive for another. You've not once told me how any of this is like good. Matter of fact, you've never conceded with my argument. Reconciled the argument that I give. Matter of fact, here's the thing that I'll even tell you right now. Not only is pop culture still going full steam ahead with this, even though they're losing at the box office, I'll even grant you that. And these are things that are happening culturally. Here's the other thing that's happening right now. History, which I talked about, which is portrayed in movies, is culturally being bastardized as far as white history. I'm still waiting to hear an argument how this is. Matter of fact, you haven't even denied that this is happening. You're saying that there's a slowing down of this happening just because people aren't buying into this. And you do this really sneaky stuff where you're slipping in characters, which it's like, I get it. Black Widow, she was never black. So that's like, you did that. And then we're going to go into this.
Well, that's just because she was a woman and I'm sexist. So don't take it too personal. Okay,
right. But here's the thing though, that has nothing to do with my argument.
My solution is I was raised in a free society in which people with shitloads of cash could make movies and do whatever the fuck they wanted to do, and the market would reward and punish them according to what was viable. So my question to you is, let's just say, for the sake of argument, because by the way, once again, I'm not like a huge like wokey or whatever, okay? Let's say you're right. All right, progressive culture has infected pop culture. It's annoying as shit. It's in our face. It's trying to shame cis heterosexual white Christian males for being cis heterosexual white Christian males. I said my solution is let the free society criticize and let the flops flop at the box office. What's your solution?
My solution is acceptance the other way around, because we have examples of pop culture. Nick Fuentes couldn't even mount these things a while ago. We're kind of progressing in a better generation. That's because our administration has changed a whole lot. I guarantee you, if Biden got like a third term, something like that happened, he wouldn't be on Piers Morgan espousing these ideas. As a matter of fact, I'm going to point to another thing before I get to the solution that I'm going to offer right now. So when he talked about this, he was being demonized for spouting facts, saying that if I want, to move to a white community because I want less violence and I want to survive. How is this, not a fact? Yet everybody, even including white people, are railing against him and saying that he's a blatant racist for saying this. Not the fact that he said, yeah, I'm a racist. I believe he was trolling when he said this. But here's the thing, though. Just saying that, now you're racist because you want to espouse facts and data. You can't even do this in movies. That's why they're warping the agenda to where every script doesn't have anybody in white. I would say, we would say whites are, oppressed in a way to where they can't be factual when we talk about movies, or they can't even espouse things like, I'm proud of my European ancestry. You'll never see that. And I've said that before. You've never reconciled that as well, too. So that's white silence that happens in media and movies. That's why I'm here, Counterpoints, is because if we had switched places right now, you would be demonized for saying everything that I'm saying right now. That's oppression.
Okay, but you don't, hold on. So what I've done in my small realm of the universe, is I've embraced the villain. So as an example, the Avatar movies, $1 billion each. It's effectively a Native American allegory. It's about actually it's mixed race. It's mixed race colonial Marines going to a foreign planet and kicking the shit out of alien Native Americans. Now, because it's a James Cameron movie, and you can't have the bad guys win. Of course, what ends up happening is the Native Americans come back and they, take their dreadlocks and they have sex with fish, and then, they beat the mercenaries or whatever. But the entire time I'm watching that movie, I'm cheering for the Marines who are kicking the fuck out of the Native Americans. So, but my question to you is, so I've said, I'm going to vote with my dollar. I'm going to vote with my attention. I don't think this is existential. We're talking about pop culture. I do want to move to education because I think education is important.
I can actually concede
but I want to ask you, like, what is your solution?
Here's my solution.
Because the progressives are still infested in Hollywood. Social media companies seem to be going where the wind blows. They're sucking up to Donald Trump right now, but let's be real. The second a Democrat gets back into office, they'll probably be sucking up to a Democrat. So what's your solution in a free society to reduce the amount of woke bullshit in pop media?
Maybe you not being on your bastardized side right now, arguing against your own kind. Because this is what I'll say right now.
I don't think I did. I just said I don't like woke bullshit,
hold on,
but I like living in a free society.
You asked me for a solution, did you not?
Yeah,
okay,
I'm asking you for a
solution. Back to the solution. I'm going to give you the solution right now. The solution is your voice and you talking, because fighting against white silence is a solution. Because if we're outspoken on media and moving the needle on debates instead of being silent and accepting the fact that you're saying something like, if there's the white history of a character, we're just going to go ahead and turn it black, and I'm just not going to educate my children about revisionist history. To me, you're just conceding to this. And to me, that's a form of immigration ideologically that you're allowing your kids to espouse and not fighting against this. That's what you're doing. If you're anti that, that's a solution. It starts from the home. And if you don't start from the home, guess what happens? We'll continue counterpoints. That's a solution. It starts from the home. If you don't have your kids accept revisionist history and you tell them the truth, because honest reality right there, that's a solution right there. And it starts from the home. That's one out of 50 solutions I can give you.
Okay. I would love to move into education. I'll be real. I would rather take my balls, put them on this table, and smash them with a ball peen hammer than debate Black Ariel or Black Heimdall.
Then to tell your kids the truth about history, historical narratives?
Yeah, I would rather smash my testicles with
That's
a hammer.
A crazy take.
Okay.
So you're just going to transgender yourself for your
Education's
kids
more important.
for lies.
Let's talk about education. I want to talk about education.
You want to cut your balls off to lie to your kids? That's crazy.
No,
That's a crazy
I'm just saying that would be less painful.
Do you identify as a woman right now because you lie to your kids?
Little
Is
Mermaid.
that the next belief system you want to integrate in your kids?
Okay. I don't give a fuck about Black Little Mermaid. So
obviously you do to cut your balls off to turn into a woman. I already have my kids,
so I already have my kids.
Crazy.
So I'm good. I got white
into education, because obviously you want to.
I
hate
white,
to castrate yourself on the last point, which you already did.
I have two white, blue-eyed children. I'm doing okay. So, anyways, yes, let's move into education. So, when it comes to education, what's happened, in my opinion, this is my frustration with the right wing right now, is that through gutting the DOE, through encouraging people to homeschool, through encouraging people to leave the public school system, effectively what they've done is they've conceded the ground. Not only have they conceded the ground when it comes to education, they also bully right-wingers and conservatives who want to get into education, because they say, oh, why would you want to be a teacher? Why would you want to be a professor? Why would you want to be in academia when you could either work the trades or be a business person or something like that? So conservatives, in my opinion, over the past 20 or 30 years, have lost the educational institution because they effectively retreated from it. And now the Trump administration is making it worse. So if we have these things where there's a historical problem, where something is being, I don't know, some teacher is using Jada Pinkett Smith as a historical reference or something like that, there isn't a conservative in there to say, bullshit, this is wrong, here's the real history.
Okay.
So what do you think is what I want to ask you this? What do you think is happening, and how would you like to fix it?
Before we get to this, you just uttered that Trump is making things worse. I'd like to hear how, because I'm not just going to accept this and bite this bullet that you're just going to tell me that Trump is making things worse for academia. I'd love to hear how. Before we get to your question.
Okay, by gutting the DOE and not coming up with a federal curriculum, what he's doing is he's passing the curriculum back to the states. When it goes back to the states, red states might be able to do more red shit, but blue states are going to do more blue shit. So you think that it's like obnoxious now with progressive academia? Just wait until the federal government isn't regulating it at all. California is going to do all of the shit that you're talking about and probably worse.
Do you think California would have improved had Trump not given it to the states? Do you think Newsom wouldn't have fought him?
I think that conservatives should have given their fucking balls a tug and they should have fought for the institution instead.
No, that doesn't answer my. Can you answer my fucking question?
What do I think that? Sorry, ask the question again.
Oh gosh, I need you to listen real quick. Counterpoints. Do you think that if Trump had said, you know, we're not giving it to the states, do you think Newsom or matter of fact, Brian Johnson in Chicago wouldn't have fought him?
I think that if the federal government oversaw curriculum, then the states would have to comply with the curriculum from the federal government.
Brandon Johnson's not complying. Newsom's not complying. They're fighting the whole time. What are you talking about? We see this in real time happening in California. New York, matter of fact, Mamdani just called Trump a traitor and a treason after having a meeting with him. They're not complying at all. This is crazy. Lunacy.
Well, okay, so hold on. We're talking specifically about education. How has California and Illinois not complied with Trump in reference to education?
Look, I'll agree that some semblances of the education may have complied, but I'm asking you about these direct states, which have implicitly, matter of fact, created a lot of harm to their states. Matter of fact, you said that Brandon Johnson, when I brought him up, because I'm going to keep this on education, but I'm going to just bring up this one point real quick.
We can move to law enforcement if you want to. I just thought
no, we're not going to move to law enforcement. We're talking about political legislation in offices and what they're doing in these offices. When he's saying we need ICE-free zones, this has a lot to do, part and parcel, with, I'm talking about cultural narratives. When you say that Brandon Johnson, and you said this in your opening statement as a retort to what I was saying, let's get back to this as well too, because I want to tie this loose end up, because you have a lot that you just said right now that hasn't been contended with. Well, I'm the guy that's going to do this right now. So you said that Brandon Johnson wants to go ahead and maintain a safe infrastructure in his city. Well, he's had what, 18 deaths in the city last weekend before this one, and I bet you the numbers are going to be skyrocketing, or if not maintaining neutrality, to where it's like more black on black deaths are going to happen absent any law enforcement outside coming in to actually save the city, because what he's doing right now is not working. And guess what? That's going to happen with academia. It's going to slow down. Now kids are harmed walking to and from school because of gang culture. All this is implicit in affecting cultural narratives when we're talking about this. And guess what? What culture feels less safe? Whites don't feel safe, because when he's talking about this, even the black community isn't buying these narratives that Brandon Johnson is selling in Chicago. So why would whites buy this if blacks don't buy it? That's crazy.
Give me 1 second, because I want to take a look at the actual homicide rate in Chicago, because I understand that there's like a lot of homicides, but you know, like the rate, right? Like 5 per 100,000, that kind of thing. So I just want to take a look at that.
Yeah, we can go per capita if you want to do that, because that's going to be a crazier conversation if you want to do this.
I'm Googling it. Do you have Chicago's homicide rate by year?
Yeah, you can use Google, Grok, or ChatGPT to help you out if you want.
I'm trying. Yeah, it looks like it's between like 10 and 15, which is probably
do what you got to do, man. Try
triple. Well, I was just gonna say it's triple the national average. So yeah, so Chicago's has been and remains a disproportionately violent city. And I'm sorry, what does this have to do with whites being oppressed?
So okay, Chicago, a lot of businesses moved out, and guess what? If you're talking about disproportionately who owns a lot of the businesses, whites, and they're taking their business elsewhere. And guess what's happening? We're limiting everything down and bad. In fact, let me go ahead and bring up what Nick Fuentes said. Whites are moving away from black communities so that way they can feel safe. And guess what? These people are taking their dollars with them. In New York, we see this happening because of this Islamist agenda infiltrating New York. These rich industrialists are taking their dollars with them. And guess what's going to happen? City funding is going to lower. Everything else is going to lower. And guess what's going to happen? Now, all of a sudden, whites are running. There's also white flight, not just white silence. There's white flight that's happening right now. None of this is being addressed by Brandon Johnson taking federal agents out of this. As a matter of fact, because I was in law enforcement, I'll even tell you the two places where federal agents can't go: national parks in one place in California that's somewhat of a military base, and that's it. But he's saying that the ICE can't go anywhere else. And what this does is allow more illegal immigration to come in and crime to run rampant. And guess where white culture is going to be? Eviscerated from that city as far as culturally and existence wise. They're going to move everywhere else that's safe, and that's what's going to happen.
I would love to tell you an anecdote just for the sake of shit posts. So I worked in a city of 15,000, and 3,000 of the people who lived in that city were Black Americans. And if the homicide was going to happen, there was a 95% chance that it was going to be in the Black community, right? We had like an occasional domestic violence homicide on the white side of town. We had an occasional redneck on the west side of town do a homicide. But let's be real, 90% of the homicides happen in the Black community, right? So what ended up happening with mass immigration, as you talked about, bear in mind, this was like probably 10 years ago. The Hispanics came in. Some of them, I'm sure, were legal, but some of them were illegal, I'm sure. And what they started doing is they started buying up the Black neighborhood. And so basically within a decade, what ended up happening was the composition of the neighborhood probably shifted from like 95% Black to probably 40% Black, 60% Hispanic. Well, what ended up happening as a result of that is the homicides dropped. The crime dropped because the Hispanic immigrants weren't a bunch of cartel gang members trying to rape and murder all of their neighbors. They were economic migrants trying to participate in the agricultural industry inside the United States of America. And also what ended up happening was because they were an insular community with conservative values, if they had a problem, oftentimes they handled it in-house. So weirdly enough, my experience with the Hispanic community as far as like immigration and integration was relatively positive. There were some friction points for sure. They don't view law enforcement the same way that Americans view law enforcement, but I think that could be addressed through integration and education. So my point is like the Black community, the African American community has had issues with education, social mobility, economic mobility, criminality, etc.
So they have problems integrating
the black folk
to our society.
Yeah,
the American
I think so.
culture, as it were.
But I also think that's white people's responsibility because we didn't, we imported them as slaves. We treated them as second-class citizens through 1965. And then intergenerationally, their poverty has been pretty bad. Or their wealth has been stymied generationally for the past 200 years.
Okay, so counterpoints. If you, let's go with this frame of logic that you're espousing right now. Sure. What if you woke up one day, counterpoints, and you noticed that $500 was deducted from your paycheck and it just says reparations? How would you feel about that?
I would not be happy about that. I'm not a fan of reparations.
Wait, hold on though. I thought you were talking about like, we're responsible. Which responsibilities are you talking about and what are you referring to? Let's get to the heart of this.
Yeah, I think that Americans, we are a nation made up of many people. Black Americans are my fellow citizens. And so them having access to safe communities, decent education, and employment opportunities is something that we should do via government action.
That doesn't contend with what I asked you. What I asked for, what are the responsibilities because of the past? These are things that normally that's like the bare minimum. Can you give me a responsibility?
But we're not doing that. You would agree that we're not doing the bare minimum, right?
Yeah, this is just normative. This could be like Asians and, other people who are like from Sweden or anybody else. This is something that's normative that you would even accept.
Civic nationalist
of like appropriation for society.
Yeah, you're right. I agree that every American should be entitled to these things.
You said this. Can you tell me how whites are supposed to be responsible for something that happened when they weren't involved in to stop or do any of this other stuff? Like, because you said you would wake up and you'd be pissed if $500 was deducted from your check for reparations. Like, which responsibilities are you talking about that isn't like the bare minimum of anybody being neighborly?
I think I asked a question that's pertinent to answering your question. Do you think that we are fulfilling the things that I laid out that you think all Americans are entitled to? Do you think that Black folk have safe communities? Do you think they have good schools? Do you think they have good access to economic opportunities?
No, we don't have. So in the graph that I showed earlier, DEI has infiltrated education. And this is going to answer your question. If you allow me to talk real quick, I'm not going to interrupt you. So what happened, though, is because we lower standards in education, now our standards of education that we're giving our children are being lowered as well, too. So guess what? Schools are now becoming more defunct. They're actually dividing families with all this. And you mentioned feminism and everything else. Well, guess who's leaning into this liberal ideology? Women, black women, these emasculated people that I'm talking about. That has pervaded the culture of American society as far as education and lowering standards of education. So when you do this, you're actually producing a populace of kids who are going to produce less in society. So I think that's a corrective action that we need to take and address DEI, which is racist and oppressive towards white people. That, again, another subject that you haven't contended with or reconciled that at all either.
Well, that's because the only time that we would be talking about DEI, CRT, integration, racist sensitivity, et cetera, would be in a sociological class. Whereas like the core curriculum of the United States, at least when I went to school a decade ago, was math and language arts, and then social studies was an additional class. So effectively, like, yeah, it's like a required part of your degree program, but out of 8 periods in a day, social studies was 1 class period. So how does like a woke social studies class that is less than 10% of my total education actually determine whether or not I am an economically and socially functioning human being? Because right now, hold on, I'll just jump ahead a little bit. Right now, I think you'll agree that while 95% of black folk are perfectly decent working class and middle class folk, they are not achieving the same level of academic success. There are some things culturally that are counterproductive, and these things probably need to be fixed if the United States of America is going to go forward as a nation of people from many backgrounds. Like, these are the things we need to fix. So how is a woke class hurting black folk?
Once again, I'm going to reiterate this same talking point because you haven't reconciled this once. I'm going to refer to the white silence that's happening because if a student, matter of fact, there's been kids booted from classrooms. There's like 3 videos that I can send you right now because they're spouting, basically speaking truth to power. When we talk about students talking about white history and revisionist history and speaking against the agenda, they get booted. So when this happens and people accept this, well, this is what's happening right now. They start bowing down to this culture that happens because we don't have voices speaking right now. These voices are becoming eradicated, and all this does is, remember what I said in the beginning opening statement, what you allow is what will continue. That's how this is happening because whites are silenced in classrooms, academia, media, movies, and everywhere else. We can't correct the history on this. The only way we can do this is through debates like this, and you not choosing your bastardized side and coming on the base side where I'm at and saying, hey, this is truth. I'm not going to lie to my kids and cut my balls off, like what I'll take, by the way, just to go ahead and plant seeds of a lying future that we want to. You see how this snowballs into a different America 60 years from what we have now, just because of the seeds planted, indoctrination of media, culture, and classroom ideologies. And this isn't even contending with feminism or anything else.
Okay. So trying to make this solution oriented, my solution, let's say that I was appointed dictator of conservatives for a day. Okay. What I would say is that we need affirmative action for conservatives, where effectively large swaths of the education system need to be conservative. Conservative perspectives need to be integrated into the education system. Males need to be encouraged to be mentors, community members, teachers, professors, etc. That would be, if I was dictator of the conservatives, how I would address this issue. Now, what it sounds like you're saying that I am underestimating the damage caused by these woke classes, that these woke classes are reinforcing racist and self-defeating perspectives within marginalized communities, and that me minimizing what they are is allowing them to do the damage unchecked. But I'm also trying to tell you, though, which is frustrating because conservatives don't, I'm just going to be real, don't give 2 fucks about education, and they can barely muster a fuck for the black community. What they're really doing is they're doing, have you heard the term a narco tyranny, where you let a society be so anarchic that effectively all the good people are scared to do the right thing.
What
the
you're
Black
doing right now is
community
very
has
sneaky.
been in a narco tyranny for centuries.
You're putting all of us underneath an umbrella. It's where we're labeling all of us and saying we don't like education. All of us. Are you going to make an absolutist claim like that?
I think I
would
said
never
earlier
do
that
that to even a
95%.
centrist or a leftist. Whatever you are, I don't know what you are, counterpoints, but I would never do that. And this is the same ideology that's espoused when people say that all whites are racist inherently, things like this. This is the same ideology, and I'm not buying it, counterpoints. When you say things like, oh, conservatives don't care about education or anything like this. Matter of fact, we have a lot of conservatives that I can point to that do give a damn about education. A lot of them.
Why did they just got the DOE?
Look,
why didn't they change? If the Department of Education was the federal administration responsible for formalizing and standardizing curriculum across the United States. Hold on, I'm not done yet. Thank you.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So if the DOE, the Department of Education, is the federal administration that's responsible for formalizing and standardizing and enforcing the curriculum of the United States, why did conservatives gut it and return it to the states, which means the red states get to be more red, but the blue states get to be more woke? And as a result, they've condemned tens of millions of people stuck in blue states to have an even more woke educational process.
I'll
tell you why. It's because of exactly what I just said. Conservatives don't give a fuck about education.
I'm going to answer that right now. If you let me answer
theirs, it's not a problem.
So you're just going to answer it for me? Is that what you're going to do? You're going to answer these questions for me?
I was finishing my thought, but you can go ahead now if you want.
I asked this if you don't want to answer, counterpoints. Matter of fact, I'll answer this right now because the inverse would have been worse. If we allowed the DOJ to say we're going to have the not DOJ, but you know what I mean, the Department of Education to run rampant and go the way it was going on this train that wouldn't have slowed down and just run amok as far as liberalism, it would have been bad because some W's are better than no W's when we talk about this. So when we say we're going to mandate this to the states, at least the red states have more ground when it comes to education than they never had before prior to the previous administration. So when we're talking about this, we have to start somewhere. So now you're demonizing this. If there's a W here, well, this W could have been more perfect. Well, that's the thing though. Trump's being fought every inch of the way when we talked about Newsom, Johnson, Mamdani in New York, everybody else. You don't think that this is happening in semblances of like the administrative policies and everything else that he wants to try to pass? We're lucky we even had that. So to me, if a red state is more red because of this, well, good, because the inverse would have been worse. It wouldn't have been more red, the opposite.
Okay. Then I already told you my solution, which is effectively, I think that conservative culture needs to change in reference to education, that effectively conservatives need to pipe up and have a voice within education. And as an example, you brought up how revisionist history is being, and revisionist progressively tinged history is being presented to American youth. That way, between pop culture and the education system, they end up erasing broad swaths of white and Christian culture. And so I've already presented to you my solution. What is your solution in reference to education, especially now that the DOE has been gutted and red states are going to go more red, but blue states are going to go more blue? What is your de-wokification solution?
The solution's already baked into the pie, because if a red state is even more red than it was before, now we at least have stake in the game. We actually have a battleground state and a fight. We now have people that we're going to have vote more red than before and more conservative than before, because if we had the inverse, like I was saying, if they were blue and then they were just going to be like magenta or something like that, that would have been worse off than a red state becoming more state. Thus, having less voters, education would have been demonstrably like lessened and decreased in quality for sure. I think that at least when we have wins, I'll count it as a win, because you can't say that everything across the map can be red. Oh, that's just bad. Well, we got more red than we used to be. To me, that's a W.
I want to ask you a pertinent question for the way that you're conceptualizing politics. Do you think that the right wing can go too far?
Both sides can go too far.
Okay. So let's say that we get red states that go more red, but let's say that Nick Fuentes, who we mentioned earlier in the conversation, let's say that him and his political ilk become more popular within the political sphere. Nick Fuentes is a Christian nationalist. Okay. The the people that he identifies as worthy of advocating for at the policy level are exclusively Christians, atheists, agnostics, Jews, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, etc. All those people are effectively second-class citizens within his system. So let's say that we have, I don't know, Alabama, and it goes Christian nationalist, and effectively they have a battle with the United States federal government because they start discriminating based off of religion and intellectual and also like a lack of religion. They start discriminating people openly based off of that. Is that an example? Would that be, you know, the red winning and therefore being based because we made it more red? Or would that be an example of the right wing going too far?
What are you talking about? We already have this going as far as the left is concerned. They have, when we talk about blasphemy laws and things like this is happening. Hold on. This is happening on the other side too, because if I talk about a certain country or said certain things online, my YouTube channel would be banned. Speech is already the restrictions on speech has been lessened. Actually, we're fighting that right now. We're gaining some kind of ground because, like I said, Nick Fuentes could say the things that he says. And now it's like, this is what I'm contending with, is the white silence that's happening. I think right now we're doing a great job moving forward against speaking against these false narratives and lies. So when you talk about revisionist history, going back to this before we even move forward with this, let's call it what it really is: lying to our children, lying to future generations, and talking about something that never happened for $500, Alex, like I espoused in my intro, which you still never conceded with. That's contended with. It's like the fifth thing right there. But this is the thing, though. When we come to education, you're talking about an extreme. Yes, extremes happen on both sides. Well, we already have that right now. There's a war right now, an ideological war that's happening right now. Like I just posted recently, Nick, the debater, I forgot his name, Charlie Kirk, had his neck opened up in front of his kids. There's an ideological war that's happening right now. People now want to fight debates with bullets because they don't have solid arguments. I think right now these debates, like on SpeakeaZy's channel, are a battleground that are going to embolden people to actually speak out against this white silence that's happening right now. And if this continues and there's no pushback, all we have is allowance for these extremes that you're talking about to happen when you say whites are doing this and it's going to be extreme. Well, it's extreme on the other end. And that's what we're doing, is we're fighting that right now.
Well, sorry. Were you saying never happened for $500, Alex, just as like a random comment, or was there like a specific revisionist history narrative that you think that you had in mind when you said that?
So I'm talking about this whole thing that you've never reconciled, as far as like lying to your kids, lying to people, and now you want to go ahead and
lying to kids about what? I just said that I didn't want to talk to my kids about whether or not Heimdall was black or white. I'm still going to.
Do you understand how
history.
Stories are so powerful? Matter of fact, when we talk about the apostles talking about things back in the day, I'm not going to get into a theological debate, but storytelling was how things were passed down. When we talk about this, things weren't written down; these stories were intact. So, do you think language is powerful this day as it was back in those days of storytelling, which is put on films, everything else, and you lying to your kids about these stories and revising history? It's just as powerful. And when you leave movie theaters, you have this belief that's now affirmed that you now pass on to your kids, that emboldens them to take action to whatever direction that this film guided them into, which is a bold blatant lie. Craziness. And you want to cut your nuts off.
Are we talking about the woman
telling them the truth?
What are we talking about? Are we talking about the woman king? What are we talking about?
I'm saying in general. You said you mentioned two characters in your children, and then you talked about Heimdall and all this because you mentioned Ariel and Heimdall when you talked about educating your kids as far as like lies and continuing on this package deal that's part and parcel with bastardizing white culture and lying with revisionist history.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I don't spend all of my life. Okay. I spend a healthy chunk of my life on the internet. Okay. So, I'm already more internet brain than more people. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and reassert that when I watch Marvel movies with my child, I'm not going to see Heimdall, the fucking guy who opens up the gate to Asgard with a sword, and I'm just going to go to like my white child real quick, and I'm going to be like, hey, kid,
so counterpoint.
Just so you know, this is based off of Norse mythology, and Heimdall wasn't actually black. He was the fairest and whitest of the Norse gods.
Counterpoints.
Why the fuck would I tell my kid that? What
counterpoints?
The fuck are we talking about?
I'm not going to bring your kids into it because I read the disclaimer and everything else. Let's say it's another person's kids. And in this universe, you are the father of this kid. right? This kid has critical race theory in their classroom, and kids ask questions because they ask questions. Kids are, matter of fact, probably some of the most honest people that we can run into. Matter of fact, if you're a social worker and you're working with them for the paycheck, they're going to call you out on this and say, you're just here for the check. So going back to this, when you work with kids, not only do they say the darndest things, but they can come home from a critical race theory class or a DEI teacher and say, well, I was taught this in class today, and they'll bring this up. How you answer this and how you respond, approach determines response. First of all, the approach to the Heimdall being black and saying, well, this is a black character and it's bold, and they bring up this conversation. Are you going to correct the record on this or not?
No, I'm not going to correct my child on whether or not Heimdall was white or black.
You're going to embolden critical race theory and revisionist history taught in the classroom to kids, and reaffirm this through a movie too.
I don't think Marvel is going to, you know, turn my kids into communists.
Marvel's like a sliver of examples out there.
We're talking about history, hold on. Let's make it more specific though. If we're talking about history, absolutely. If we're talking about, so for instance, like, I don't know about you, but I was taught that the Crusades were like the most evil thing that's ever happened in the world because these marauding theocratic Christian freaks just, you know, ran out of Europe and started slaughtering Muslims and Jews. Okay, that's what I was taught when I was growing up. And this was way before CRT and DEI. This was way before that. Okay. Now, what ended up happening, because I actually read a whole bunch of history books and I studied the history of the Middle East and North Africa, and I also studied the history of Europe at the college level, is I realized, hold on, wait a second. The Roman Empire was a thing up until this point. The Roman Empire converted to Christianity at this point. It lost shitloads of territory to Muslim incursions that were founded around this approximate time.
So white eradication was happening and Christian ideals was happening. Gotcha. Okay. So revisionist history happened then. And you accepted that then.
What was your statement?
So white revisionist history has been happening even before critical race theory has been happening. And you bought into this. Well, what you did was you fought this with truth, but you can't do this with your kids at home. When kids are taught something different, you'd rather cut your nuts off. Am I correct?
Specifically when it comes to Ariel exclusively being a white ginger and Heimdall being a black man, yeah, I don't give a fuck about that. But if you're talking about real history, then yeah, I care about real history, and I'll set the record straight on real history.
But here's the thing:
Heimdall's not real history. You understand Heimdall is a mythological character.
Hold on. Do kids grow up with fairy tales and believe them to be true? Are there kids that believe in Santa for real and the Tooth Fairy and all this?
Of course.
Right. So if they believe all this and Hollywood is indoctrinating our children, then they truly believe that Heimdall is really black and all this, and we're revising history. Snow White is actually black when her skin was white as snow. They have to revise that now too. So take that out, strip that from the record. We're stripping everything down. What is white in 60 years from now if we continue on this trajectory that you're accepting?
It's probably a European descended plurality.
How would this exist if we keep stripping away at the history?
Question, I'd like the opportunity to
go ahead.
Finish it. It's probably a European descended plurality of Northern Europeans within the American project that is only going to be as aware of its history as it's interested in researching it.
So you're not going to correct the record when it comes to your kids, or you just want them to believe narratives?
I'll say it again. Not when it comes to pop culture, them to believe but when it comes to
white
real history.
White blackwash now.
When it comes to real history, I will correct the record and introduce them to primary and secondary sources and talk about nuances of history and this, that, and the other. I will not do that in reference to Marvel films.
Have you, I will ask you a question real quick, because I really want to get honesty from you with the truth. Not saying that you haven't been honest. That remains neither here nor there. But I'm going to ask you a question real quick. Have you told your kids that Santa is coming and they believed it and that was real to them?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're willing to do this and you're so emboldened for them to believe this, and you're doing all this because adults, what we plan on doing is hiding. We have to wait till they're asleep because we have to hide this under the covert night, and we're going to have nocturnal operations to wrap these presents and everything else under the cover of night and everything else, and we're going to hold this lie, because it's what Americans do. Matter of fact, I'm giving you a good example of this. Until they get old enough to be wise enough to know the truth, and they confront us on this, and then we're like, Santa's not real. It's been me giving you this present the whole time. And I guarantee you, kids come to their parents all the time. And then you have to correct the record. Yet you won't correct the record when it comes to other things. This is weird. This is a paradox. This is paradoxical because you're going to correct the record when it comes to Santa eventually. But you're not going to do this with Ariel or anything else.
You're saying, why wouldn't I correct the record on, based off of your logic, why wouldn't I correct the record on St. Nicholas? Why wouldn't I say, hey, actually, Santa Claus is not this magical being that teleports into everybody's houses and gives them gifts. He's actually a saint from Turkey during, the medieval period who, he was canonized for XYZ ABC reason, and he died in the year 1200. Because if I was as autistic as you, that's what I would be required to do. Instead,
how would you be wrong for doing that, for correcting the history to your children?
Presents.
So how would you be wrong for correcting the history of your children?
Because I would be correcting mythology with historical fact, but I would be ruining something that's joyful because I have autism.
Oh, so you're upset because because a child's reality can be ruined by the truth. You're upset about that. That's the thing that you're contending with right now.
I don't know if I'm upset by it, but I'm describing why I'm not going to tell my kids about St. Nicholas instead of just letting them believe in Santa Claus.
Okay, like I said, what you will continue. This happens in education and mass and media and everywhere else. Matter of fact, Trump's being fought in every step of the way when it comes to this. And this all leads up the chain of command and then down to education when you're talking about red states becoming more red, but blue states becoming more blue. To me, at least I could concede this fact of saying that, yes, that happened. But the red states, we wanted them to become more red anyways. We have Jasmine Crockett, lunacy of an individual in her red state herself. But it's like, we need to weed this out. And to me, I think that if you have people like this outed who are fake and have black culture around black people, but then around white culture, just saying, golly gee willikers, the weather's swell today. To me, if I was to do that, I'd be bastardized for speaking white culture because I have grammatically great and I'm well-spoken and everything else. To me, you never reconcile this as far as like white eradication of culture within black culture because this happens. There's so much to cover and we don't have any other time. But I don't feel like you ever countered any of the arguments I've had tonight.
That's that is the end of the hour of open floor, but I see the convo still like pretty heated up. And maybe you guys wanted to iron out some more things. So do you guys want another 30 minutes to get more out? Or
I mean, I
don't mind if he has an argument. Finally, I mean, I'm looking for one argument instead of just
sure. Like, I don't think any of the things that you've hold on. You want an argument? I'll give you an argument. Okay,
please. I've been looking for one.
I don't think any of the things that you presented have anything to do with white people being the most oppressed race in America in 2025. Having pop cultural icons race swapped, having what is it, like your education be wokeified, having some sense of white guilt because it's been narrativized.
Okay, great.
This all pales. I'm speaking. You want a real point. So this is all pales in comparison to what's been done to every other minority group within the United States of America, and it's almost laughably small. It's almost like this is oppression. Oppression is I have Black Ariel. Oppression is I have Heimdall. Oppression is, I have to roll my eyes when my woke progressive blue-haired teacher says something obnoxious that I know isn't historically accurate. And I could just Google it and then say, hey, Miss whatever, your fucking source is bullshit. Here's what's actually happened according to the internet. Like, what the fuck is this? Oppression throughout history was like genocide, rape, murder, second-class citizen status, all that kind of bullshit. So what the fuck is this point that I don't think any of your supporting points support the narrative of white people are the most oppressed race in America.
Do you think that oppression happened because somebody just took a sword and lopped somebody's head off and it was just violence? No, it started with the chain reaction of thought and ideology that never got pushed back against and countered. None of these points got countered back in the no pun intended, but none of this happened and it never fought, thus leading to swords to necks and things like this. This is how everything starts. And matter of fact, you're doing the same damn thing that you've done the whole debate. When I go ahead and talk about this, you then say autism and you bastardize this and say, well, no, because factual in everything that's happening right now, pointing to things that, and I have a succinct point that I'm pointing to. Now all of a sudden I'm autistic. The Black community does this all the time. When I say this, instead of saying that you're too white or you're speaking white, you stop doing this. Now that's bastardized. Now I have to be more Black. Now white culture is being demonized within my culture. You're doing the same thing with verbiage, saying, oh, you're autistic. Oh, because maybe I'm smart and I'm intelligent and I can reconcile some of these points that you bring up. Now you see, you're doing the same thing on a different level. This happens in America, and we're doing this with language and and this happens in academia. Now your kids are going to buy this and you're okay with chopping your nuts off to do it. Crazy.
Yeah, but you don't even have the good autism, because like the good autism would actually lead you to like checking out the stats between different racial demographic groups, and you would check out the things that are like good for life. Because if you have an oppressed class of people, you would probably see it like resonate within certain aspects of their lives. It would probably like show up in health outcomes, access to education, law enforcement, incarceration, all that kind of like quality of life, you know, access to like high quality nutrition, all that kind of stuff. Okay. That's where you would see the manifestations of oppression, but you haven't looked at that, statistically analyzed it, and come to a conclusion. You just went, oh, well, you know, Blacks and Hispanics and Asians, you know, they all have these affirmative action programs in the modern era, and white people have a series of inconveniences because of progressives. Therefore, white people are the most oppressed people in the United States of America. Your autism is misdirected. It could be better.
Anyways, back to this real subject, because you're little subjective.
No, that's a real subject. Don't you think
it
that
doesn't mean shit to me? I don't care about your subjective analysis.
30 minutes.
What I care about is this point that I'm going to give you right now.
Oppression should show up statistically.
Let's go to real oppression. If you want real oppression, this is happening right now. Illegal immigration is infiltrating our border right now. These people are coming. They're refusing to assimilate. Dearborn, Michigan. Let's go back to that. In Dearborn, Michigan, they're telling people that this food is halal. It needs to be halal. They're changing mandates in New York. This is happening right now. They're refusing to assimilate to our culture, thus telling us to assimilate to their culture. That's oppressive in nature. Not to mention this, but you're not telling me how students. Well, hold on. I never interrupted you one time. I said one thing and then that's it. Not to mention, this is oppression. You've not once told me how this isn't a form of oppression. When you talk about this, you're saying oppression's only one type. That's crazy. Now you sound like a liberal that's saying, oh, I have trauma. There's various methods of trauma in different stages of trauma. You're talking about one semblance. Suppression of information is oppressive. Suppression of non-divided families is oppression. Matter of fact, I would even say that you have a lot of privilege, right? But the only white privilege you have, I would say, is my dad's. You have a dad that's going to come back from getting milk. You have a nuclear family that's going to stay together. We've bought into a narrative, but we blame white people for this all the time and say it's because of you. No, we didn't have to take the crack epidemic and sell it on the corners. We didn't have to take the EBT. We could have allowed the fathers back in the home. So that's our fault. We were implicit on our own destruction, yet white people will say, no, it's our fault for doing this. Yeah, you can blame everybody all you want, but we're implicit on our own destruction. I at least have accountability on my side, whereas you don't.
Okay. So how, just walk me through the logic, because I think there's something missing here. How are white people kept in a state of subservience and hardship, especially by the unjust exercise in authority? And bear in mind, I'm not asking just for examples like pop culture race swaps. You didn't just say white people, hold on. You didn't just say white people are oppressed. You said they're the most oppressed.
Yes.
So how do you qualify white people are the people who are most kept in subservience and hardship by unjust authority?
Okay. Everybody can be racist except for white people. If I can say things and call you salt and crackers on this live panels, it gets brushed off like it's nothing. But if the inverse happens, you can't do this. You've even accepted the fact that if you had a white-owned barbershop, can't happen. And you've even conceded that whole point. I can go on the NAACP.
Will you get offended if I say food that is
oppressive? Like, you can't even be proud of yourself here.
Food that is vaguely associated with black people? collard greens and cornbread. Okay, what if I use that as an invective insult? Am I going to have the entire internet jumping down my throat because I stated 2 random foods that are associated with black folk? Matter of fact, didn't Nick Fuentes use the N-word with an A and an ER recently and avoid cancellation because he's moved on to platforms that don't support cancellation? So Nick Fuentes and Kanye West have actually saved me. They've saved the white race from the injustice of not being able to be racist. So now that Kanye West and Nick Fuentes on the internet have made it socially acceptable for white people to be racist again in public, what other oppression are whites suffering?
It's funny, you throw several things at me, and you're very sleuthy when it comes to this because you throw in food and then you throw in Nick Fuentes and all this. There's a whole cultural, ideological narrative out there that whites don't season food. And whites have also accepted this, that whites can't dance and they have no culture. Thus, in the beginning, when I pointed this out, that whites have no culture, yes, whites have a ton of culture, but none of this culture is passed down to our kids. What culture are kids going to accept? And I'm going to go ahead and address your Nick Fuentes wild Kanye thing too, as well too. But what culture also are white people going to have if we keep buying these lies by academia being passed down to our kids that, oh, whites don't have this, they're not good at this? Is this the counter that we need because blacks were oppressed?
Listen, white culture. Sorry, I lost audio for him. Oh,
you muted yourself on the StreamYard there, Marte.
Okay, and hold on. I'm gonna.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, white culture is emo music, pop punk, country. It's definitely a whole shitload of foods like cheeseburgers, French fries. You're swimming in it. You're swimming in white culture. It's steak. It's French. It's fish and chips from the Brits. It's pasta from the Italians. It's chicken parmesan from the Italians. It's food. It's music. It's dance. It's this, that, the other. And you're saying, this is all disappearing, and yet we're swimming in it constantly. I'm constantly swimming in white culture. And so once again, let me reorient the question. So you said that one of the oppressions that white people suffer in the modern era is that minorities, through the oppression Olympics, are capable of being bigoted and racist against whites. People are not allowed to call it out under that framework, even though I do. And then whites cannot be bigoted and racist in public without suffering social consequence. I brought up the fact that Nick Fuentes and Kanye West have normalized the N-word with an ER. They've also normalized some quite extreme right-wing political positions. And so as a result, I am now emancipated from this hardship. So I'm asking you, in what other ways are white people oppressed in American society?
So recently, I can even send you the video. There was a teacher that was fired and terminated because he spoke truth in a classroom about white history and that blacks aren't oppressed nowadays. Because he uttered this, terminated from his position. Do you think
what truth was he uttering?
Silence in the classroom.
What,
do you think anybody else
was he
follow suit and dare do this against
high school teacher said blacks aren't oppressed?
Yeah. He said blacks aren't as oppressed as they used to be. And right now, this is just an overcorrection of cultural thinking narratives. That's not happening.
Don't you think that that's a so for instance, like what teacher was he? Was he a math teacher? Was he an English teacher? Was he a social studies teacher? Was he a psychology teacher?
Yes.
Okay, so if he's social studies and he's stating an opinion in reference to black oppression, then yeah, I don't think he should have been canned for stating an opinion.
So when this happens, so hold on. Let's hold on to this thought. When this happens, do you think anybody else would follow suit and do the same thing? Or would this shut everybody else up from speaking the truth in academia?
Well, I mean, it's the truth as you see it. So hold on.
No, this is the guy used stats, facts in his classroom and actually broke down this narrative. I can send you the video if I look it up right now.
Stats and narrative, like statistics can be narrativized. We use statistics to justify our narratives. But well, hold on. So I'll hit you with an example. So you remember Mike Brown, right? The hands up, don't shoot guy The
Yeah.
guy who punched a cop in the face and then, you know, walked back towards the cop and got shot like 9 times and died.
I agree that can happen. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's not my point. My point is that in the DOJ investigation of Ferguson, Missouri, they found that the city of Ferguson had real cash flow problems in that they were treating their citizens as pay pigs, where they were using traffic stops and jaywalking citations and various citations in order to pad the municipal coffers because they weren't getting enough tax revenue. Okay. So if a black person, let's say that this is disproportionately true.
I agree. This has happened in America in some semblances.
In some segments of working class and middle class America. Do you think that those people might feel like law enforcement officers aren't there to serve and protect and advocate in their best interest, but instead they're effectively harassing corrupt highway brigands?
So here's the thing, though. We were talking about like
or anybody in the Ferguson, Missouri community might think that
people having
they might have a
badges,
hostile opinion of cops.
Not necessarily race issue. So if you're talking about people wanting to line coffers' pockets with funding and things like this would definitely be abuse of job and employment. I have not heard a racially motivated reason out of you when it comes to this. What I'm hearing about is maybe borderline classist issue. And when we talk about classist, it's like there's a difference between us and law enforcement and things like that. But that doesn't really contend with the race thing that we're talking about here.
When you think about how during the Reconstruction era, black folk were prohibited by charter in unions to not be positioned as officers over white men, and therefore they got less pay, less employment opportunities all the way through the 1960s. When you think about the fact that after World War II and the GI Bill, black folk were not encouraged in order to use the GI Bill in order to get educational opportunities, and when they tried to buy properties, they were effectively segregated into the black community. And then the black community would disproportionately had shitty schools because of lower property tax revenue, which was only fixed within the past like 40 or 50 years. And do you think that, like, I could keep going for all the ways in which black people were pushed to the side of American society, and generationally, this is cumulatively led to worse outcomes for the black community? But you're shaking your head no. Why are you shaking your head no?
I can do the opposite. So the military, hundreds of millions were spent on white privilege training. I don't know if you know this because you were ex-military. I was wondering when you're going to bring this up. Diversity quotas were distracting from lethality. This divided truce, when we talk about like troops on the ground, it contributed to historic recruiting shortfalls. All this is happening. And to me, it's like mass non-European immigration, higher birth rates among minorities are shifting to populations. So whites are going to be a minority. Remember what I said at the beginning of the opening of the debate? Whites make up 8 to 10% as a minority. Well, guess what's happening? Culture is being eradicated. DEI has further oppressed other people too. You haven't told me how that's not oppression. You haven't told me how lying to your kids about white history is not oppressive to your kids as well too. This is
just
crazy.
Made up a position, so that's interesting. But so hold on. That wasn't my point. My point was that we can look at systems that have disproportionately fucked over the black community and led to generational outcomes that are worse. And those things are still true today, despite the things that we have done to improve our systems. So, like, how are we still arguing that white people are the most oppressed race in America? Considering that we probably, the only way that white people have it worse than, the only people that we have it worse than are Jews and Asians. Hispanics and blacks, we kick the shit out of statistically.
So you mean,
every single metric.
Hold on. Let's contend with the DEI argument. So back to why, because you're saying, how are they oppressed? I'm going to tell you how they're oppressed, even more so because you haven't contended with this. I think that the best way in the door is to be black or another race, because if you're white, you're at the back of the line, unless you have like something in between your legs, which separates gender and sexes and all these other things. I think that if you're white, you don't have a leg up when it comes to the industry of getting employment because of when we talk about DI programs, that's also infiltrated education, everything else. How is that not oppressive? You haven't even told me how that's not oppression. All you're doing is telling me that's not oppression because of my ideal of repression.
Well, hold on. So I'm going to reaffirm my point and then I'll address what you're saying. Okay. So number one, I would say that the reason why I don't believe you when you say whites are the most oppressed is because the two examples that you've brought up so far are we've been required to go to woke classes, and also we've had race swapped pop culture media, and people are actually, you brought up three examples. People are allowed to be racist to us, but we're not allowed to be racist back without social consequence. Those are like the three examples that you brought up. I brought up how black folk, through what I would say is what the sociologists would call systemic racism, is that they have been intergenerationally fucked over compared to whites, and this is still borne out statistically in current day America. Now, hold on.
Not true.
But I can address what you're saying because you asked me a question. In reference to affirmative action, the way that it's been explained to me and the way that I understand it is that there should be similarly qualified white folk who are we're like 66% of the population, or at least we were a few years ago. And if you have a similarly qualified black person or a similarly qualified person of color or Asian person or female or whatever, then as a result, in a tiebreaker, it would go to the minority person. And
so you're saying that replacing merit and cohesion with racial patronage and divisions, okay?
No, I actually don't like it. I think we should move back to a purely I think we should move to a purely meritocratic system. But this doesn't mean that white men or white people are the most oppressed in America.
They are. And I'll tell you why. I've told you culturally,
give me
I've told you
example.
through cinema, education-wise. If we go on this trajectory that you want to ignore and keep lying to your kids, you want to cut your nuts off and lie to your kids, do you think America will be more American than it was now, or will it maintain the same semblances of the America you see 60 years from now? And if we allow this illegal immigration problem to happen?
Yeah,
Still.
I'd love to answer this as well. You understand that like 98% of the people who are coming into the United States of America are from Central and South America, right?
Yeah, this creates a cultural shift. Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
Sorry. What culture? What like language group do they emanate from? What do we call these people?
Oh, like we didn't have a Somali issue that just happened right now. Like we didn't.
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I asked. Don't dodge.
No, I'm not dodging. I'm saying that these are
yes.
People don't speak Somalian.
Answer the question.
Is Somalian a language?
95 to 98% of the people who are coming into this country illegally are coming from one demographic. What is that demographic? What do we call those people?
We call them illegal aliens.
No, we call them Hispanic. Why do we call them Hispanic?
Illegal aliens? Yeah, we call them Hispanic, whatever you want to call them. They're illegal aliens. The people that come in and don't want to assimilate.
So 98% of them are Hispanic. That's the answer I was looking for. And then why do we call them Hispanic?
What does that have to do with what we're talking about right now?
Why don't you just answer the question?
What is that? Can you tell me the relevance?
No, you can answer the question.
Oh, yeah. So I have to answer your question.
It would be nice if you did.
Look, counterpoints. I'm talking about the warping of culture because regardless of what they speak, what all of this is being weaponized against white culture. You've never reconciled the fact that the guy in Dearborn, Michigan is saying we need your culture of Christianity out of the city. When we talk about this,
that's not what he said. He said some random fucking dickhead who was being rude at a city council meeting. He'll throw him a parade when he gets him out of the city. You didn't even show us the original context for who that person was. So was it some rude fucking random?
We can show you the full footage if you want to see this. This was a white Christian. This is a white Christian.
Oh, so he's a white Christian, so he can do no wrong. How about you answer my question? Why do we call Hispanics Hispanic?
You mean people that come from Hispania? Is that what you're talking about?
Okay. No.
The hell are you talking about,
that's
bro?
funny. That's funny. Okay. Hispanic is root word Spain. You know why? Because the Spanish colonized Central and South America. Spanish people,
to whose detriment,
are a combination of two demographic groups.
To whose detriment at
people
the time?
From Spain, who are European, who are white, who speak a European language, and Native Americans, the people who were here first.
Okay,
so
cool.
Yes,
let's roll with this.
Northern European. I'm not done yet. Thank you. A Northern European Anglo-Protestant cultural tradition will mix with a predominantly Catholic Spanish culture over time, but this is not existential. They're both European. They're both, to some degree, white. And the degree to which they're mixed with Native Americans. So you're fucking freaking out about we're going to have this broad existential demographic shift. And I'm telling you, the people who are demographically invading you are Native Americans and more Europeans.
The crazy thing
about
existential. The crazy thing is you brush off Dearborn, Michigan, you brush off New York, you brush off Chicago as if they're just happenstance. It doesn't happen.
Muslims are 2% of the population.
What? Well, hold on. Let's back up. Let's get back into reality here. When you talk about Michigan is nothing, when you talk about New York, oh, that's nothing, this is going to happen. This is the same mindset of you telling your kids, no, I'm not going to address these issues or correct anything, thus leading to things that you want to allow to continue. This is major. To me, just hearing a mayor say this, and then it bleeds over into other things with Ilhan Omar and her nonsensical ideas, and her saying that, no, Somali is the best ideological belief system that we have as Somalians. She's in America. This is crazy. This belief system doesn't just stop in New York. It doesn't stop in Michigan. It doesn't stop in Chicago or anything else. American, westernized, Caucasian heritage is being bastardized, and all the European, whatever semblances of history is being washed out of the American educational system. And also we can see this politically happening, and this divide happening as their citizens accept this. Matter of fact, when I brought up the teacher that got ousted from his classroom and terminated, this happens on a grander scale because now people can't speak up because they're fear of retribution, of being fired from positions, ousted from political positions and everything else, leading to white silence, which you haven't reconciled. You're silencing your kids with lies, and now you're doing this and accepting this. This is crazy that you're even espousing this.
Okay, so 20%, 60. Okay, I want you to think about this for a second.
This is crazy.
It might be hard.
Crazy.
It might be hard, but I want you to think about this, okay?
Yeah,
So
go ahead. Maybe it will be. Go ahead.
America, the United States of America, is 60% white, which means that they are Northern Europeans. They're Irish people, they're English people, they're Spanish people, they're Italians, and they've all mixed together, and that's 60% of the United States of America. 98% of the immigration that's coming into the United States, including the illegal immigration, is Hispanic. Hispanic culture, I mean, I guess technically there's probably some Brazilians in there, but the Brazilians are Portuguese, Native American, and African people who have all mixed together. And Hispanics are Spaniards mixed with Native Americans. And that is still 80% of the population. And so you're saying, oh, well, Ilhan Omar in the Somalis in Dearborn, Michigan are, I'm assuming you think that they're Islamic supremacists. They're Islamists.
Never said that.
They're theocratics. Well, I'm assuming that's what you believe. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having a fucking hissy fit about it. But they're different than us. We shouldn't let them into our ethno-religious enclave because they're so different they can't be integrated.
I agree, because they refuse to. Yeah.
Okay. What I'm telling you is the people that you're worried about integrating are 2% of the American population.
Oh, let me stop you right there.
80% of the American population
They're not integrating,
is already American.
They're not integrating.
13% of them are black and they're American.
Wait, hold on. You're now taking my words and twisting them. You're saying I'm worried about them integrating. No, I'm worried about them not integrating. That's my whole point, is because of the non-integration. Here's the thing though, Connor, I can go to Sweden. I can go to any other country. I have to integrate into their culture, their ideals, their system. I may even have to learn their history about how they behave themselves and maybe even their national holidays, things like that. Now all of a sudden we're allowing these Hispanics to come in. We'll even go with that. Are they integrating to our culture? I don't see semblances of this happening in mass. Matter of fact, it's happening to the point where we're having a bastardization that leads into the academia that we see, culture and everything else. Dearborn, you haven't even reconciled any of this, and even the DEI or anything like that. This is crazy. You're like literally a bush dancer. You're dancing around all of this. Like none of this.
Okay,
and then you're
so
saying none of this
I'll reiterate my point.
American ideology.
I don't think you're contending with what I've said. Okay,
you're not contending with the oppression that's happening right now with American ideology. Right. I asked you a question that still never got answered.
Well, ask it again.
Okay, so if you continue to lie to your kids as a general normative society, and we say, you know what, we believe that Santa isn't real, we're going to tell them the day that they do, whatever, and we accept this critical race theory, and a kid comes home and this kid says, hey, you know, our teacher was talking about this and that really happened, and you blatantly know that this historical narrative was behind, whether or not it's fictional or not, kids are bought into narratives all the time, and you don't correct the record and you allow this happening. And do you think that if this happens and let's say this is pervasive, an invasive species comes in as a form of a different race, whatever you want to call this, and we allow this to happen, do you think America is going to stay the same culturally with white narratives 60 years from now?
No, I'll just answer this flatly. No. If CRT,
then that's the whole damn argument. This is crazy, bro.
This has nothing to do with the core of our argument. What you're saying is, if progressivism goes unchecked culturally for the next 60 years, will we live in a different society? Obviously, that's just descriptively true. However, I'm an integrationist. I'm somebody who thinks that when you come to the United States of America, you should be compelled to learn English.
Connor,
I'm also somebody who believes in truth. So I think that in reference to history, it doesn't
hold on,
matter.
you're gonna lie
what
to your kids, though.
No, I'm not even going to lie to them. I'm just not going to talk to them about why Heimdall is black. I seriously think you just made something up in your own mind.
You're not going to correct the record. Let's get that straight.
I'm not going to correct the record when they're watching Marvel movies that Heimdall was white in Norse mythology. If we talk about Norse mythology separately, then I'll talk to them about Norse mythology, but I'm not going to talk to them about, you know, hey, a bunch of Jews in Hollywood really wanted to race mix the American people. So as a result, Heimdall was cast as Idris Elba. No, I'm not going to be telling my 8-year-old child that. Sorry.
No, if your kid
comes, freak internet shit.
If your kid comes from a critical race theory class and says something and then the movie that you're watching is in reference to Norse mythology, you're not going to correct the record. You literally just said that.
From critical. Well, yeah, no. Of course, if they come back from a class and they say, "Hey, did you know Heimdall was black in Norse mythology?" I'm going to be like, "No, where did you hear that?"
Wait, hold on. This contradicts what you just said earlier.
No, it doesn't, because I was talking about Marvel movies versus real history. It doesn't contradict a single fucking thing I've said. You're just not listening to what I'm saying.
No,
so hold on.
You're not answering
ask you a question.
This is very bad faith of you to even not even answer a single damn question.
Not bad faith at all.
Yes, because here's the thing, though. This is the crazy part about that. You even know what bad faith means, Connor?
Yeah, it means that you're arguing and you don't mean what you are saying sincerely.
Okay, I was going to ask you how do you feel if you didn't eat breakfast this morning, we could pass that. So here's the thing, though. You're arguing and saying I'm not a liberal while arguing against conservative values, because here's the thing, though. Do you believe that there's a threshold a country can take as far as integration? Do you think that we'll hit a threshold that's too much?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you believe that, you don't think that that's happening right now at the moment?
No.
So in Chicago and in Michigan, you don't think that that's happening?
No, I think that there's probably problems of integration because we don't have. No. Hold on. Think about this for.
This is crazy.
I don't know why.
Sell me a lemon right now. Just please. This is crazy.
Okay. Well, I'll explain if you'll indulge me. The homicides over the past 30 years have been cut in half. Okay. So the black community still has disproportionately more violence, but we are in a fundamentally less violent society than we were in the 1990s. So I would actually say that this is a vast improvement compared to 30 years ago. We have violence comparable. I understand we're out of time, but I just want to finish the point.
I disagree, blatantly disagree with that, but go ahead.
Okay. We have violence and criminality that's similar to the 1950s and 1960s, which is oftentimes the idyllic time period that national conservatives want to appeal to. And so these histrionics about criminality, they're applying to segments of our society of which I don't think you or I are an active participant in. It's disproportionately working class black folks who are fucked over statistically by homicides and crime.
By ourselves, not by whites. Disproportionately by ourselves. We murder ourselves the most, not white people. Matter of fact, if you look at the FBI statistics, the most recent ones. Hold on. You want to go to law enforcement? We can do that. If you want to look in the recent FBI statistics, blacks kill more blacks than whites kill blacks. Whites kill more whites than whites are killed by blacks. But overall, if you tally all these numbers up, there are more whites killed by blacks, and blacks make up the minority of this equation. I can even show you the stats on this. This is crazy.
No, I'm familiar with the stats. What does this change?
You're out of your mind to see that it doesn't. We can see this blatantly in society right now.
What? Okay. Nothing that you said changes anything I said.
Yeah, I don't.
All right, that's
the prompt is white people are the most oppressed race in America.
Oh, whoops. We're gonna wrap that up there. Shout out to both the debaters for coming in there hot. It was great too. You can also find both the debaters in the description, so make sure you go sub up to both of them. So we're gonna get moving into the 5-minute closing statements here. Whenever you're ready, Marte, we'll start the timer up with your voice.
Yes, it's funny that my opponent blatantly admits I didn't study for this debate or look up anything. I mean, I'm just gonna run on tangents off of just me just randomly just thinking thoughts of what I see. Objectively, right now, I think that he has a conceit. I think reconciled my points of DEI. The fact that even if he does have an answer, just giving back to black people isn't going to help. When I brought up the natives, he's never reconciled this at all. He's never reconciled the damage that happens with think and ideology that's happening in America. Right now, he's so compelled to say that this is such a wild thing to debate that he chooses to step up and do this. Well, debate is extremely powerful because we can have people who are lukewarm fence sitters at home, yet saying, I don't know how to feel about this, and then get here and be emboldened by ideology. The same thing happens in movie theaters that we see. The whole time when we talk about Heimdall and all this, let's just say that was real history. Well, if I asked him, would he correct a record with his kids? He would be unbothered. Well, if we multiply this rhetoric amongst a lot of white Americans and they do the same thing, well, guess what's happening? Suppression. Sounds like what? Oppression. So there's an oppression, Olympics that he's talking about. What I'm talking about is real oppression, ideological wars that are happening right now. Oppression to the point to where people are actually taking bullets to the necks because of this. And to me, ideology is so powerful that if we combat this with truth, not lies, which my opponent has admitted that I cut my nuts off and lie to my kids to do this. Sounds very transgender-like, but we're not going to go there. So this is the thing, though. When he talked about oppression, he only refers to violence and physicality. Oppression happens on various avenues. It's a multifaceted conversation, and I understand that this is a comprehensive debate that we're having about a debate that could be talking about compartmentalization, and he could have went the avenue and actually conceded and said, no, oppression happens in different semblances. This could be oppression in education, because if we're lying to people, we're oppressing them from hearing the truth, thus lying to them and having them buy into an agenda that we now seep into our homes. And it starts from the homes. And then, not to mention this, he's also conceded the fact that he can't own a white-owned barbershop. Can't ever happen. I can go ahead and be proud about my race, but he can't be proud about his. I can be racist towards him in culture, but guess what? He can't be racist towards me. And if we go down this rabbit hole of everything I can do and he can't do, what am I? A black supremacist now. So now, if we have black supremacist ideology, and I was to tell Connor this with this ideology from me thinking about this whole argument that I've had with him, I guarantee you that I would get a pass on black supremacy, but he can't even have a fraction of any of that. Because if he did that, platform canceled, banned, debanked, and depersoned from everything else. This can't happen. So it's funny because he says, I'm not a liberal, but argues against conservative ideology of retaining semblances of truth and culture. And that's all I'm saying is if we have a preservation that happens, I don't think that should be blocked by my race or my color over his, because that is supremacy. Because if I think that if I'm going to tell his kids a lie and then he enforces this lie, we're putting colors on top of that. Kids buy this agenda, they eat it up, and they grow up with this. And guess what happens? Kids turn into bullies, things like this. There's a liberal argument for that, but I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole. My opponent also brings up the extremist argument and says, right-wing supremacist ideals happen all the time. Suppression happens all the time. Yeah, this happens on both sides. But what I'm doing is I'm actually speaking truth. All I want is truth in classrooms. All I want is white silence to vanish because that exists. All I want is DEI to go away because that needs to vanish. He's saying that that's not oppressive to white people. How in his crazy mind he says DEI is not oppressive to white people or a form of oppression is insane and asinine to me. When we have quotas, things like this, we've already had this happen with the female version of that in law enforcement. I guarantee you, Counter would agree with me. We've had female police officers that when they're on the scene, we'll say, no, we'll put them in the back and they'll never go in the door first. Never happened. $500, Alex. Never seen it in my law enforcement career. I guarantee you he's never seen it either. And if it happens, that's true DEI right there. And that endangers everybody else, thus invoking liabilities. And here's the other argument. When we talk about DEI oppressing people, it's like, so Connor, we have a DEI heart surgeon. Do you want that guy to work on you or the guy that worked into that position off of merit? And that's the oppression that happens. This endangers lives, causes liability. And also when we revamp history, he's already agreed that the America that we see nowadays is not going to be the same white American historical narrative that we have, thus warping everything else through immigration and other things. He's denied the Michigan and all this other stuff. Anyways, crazy.
All right. Thank you for that closing statement, Marte. And with that, we're going to hand the mic over to Counterpoints. And whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Yeah, so I would invite Marte and Rulus, by the way. That's interesting last name. I would invite you to watch a movie called Gangs of New York. It's specifically about Irish mass immigration into the United States of America. It's about the anxieties and hatred of Catholic Irish Americans when they were coming into the country from Bill the Butcher. And half of the things that you said, your worries about demographic shifts, cultural shifts, religious shifts, all that kind of stuff, it's coming out of Bill the Butcher's mouth. And it's kind of silly to think that he saw these existential crises of the Irish horde coming over and polluting and destroying the United States of America. I'm a product of that Irish horde. I'm a product of the barbarians knocking down the gates and coming over in their flea-infested ships. Okay? Now, to correct some things, I can own a white-owned barbershop. If I owned a barbershop, it would be a white-owned barbershop. However, if I marketed it as a white-owned barbershop and I said, Connor's white-owned barbershop, that might be a bad marketing strategy that would not be tolerated by broader society. So I just wanted to correct you on that detail. To clarify, when I would smash my nuts with a ball-peen hammer, what I was saying was that I would rather do that than talk about Black Heimdall or Black Ariel with my kids. I do not give a fuck about Disney movies having random black characters. White people are the most oppressed is the title of this debate. And the examples that we brought up were race swaps in media, woke classes in education, affirmative action, and mass Hispanic immigration changing the nature of the country. In reference to affirmative action, I think it needs to be corrected that allegedly, I don't know, I've never hired anybody using affirmative action stuff, but affirmative action allegedly is larger corporations, if you have similarly qualified candidates, are encouraged to, well, not encouraged, they might be legally compelled. But if you have similarly qualified candidates, then you're supposed to hire the minority or the woman over the white man. That's all it is. Now, is that good? No. Is it the worst oppression that people have ever suffered? Or is it comparable to the black experience in America? No. I think oppression should be manifest statistically. I think that if we analyzed homicides, deaths of despair, drug abuse, incarceration rates, educational outcomes, and health outcomes, whites are towards the tippity top. The only people who beat us are, I would say, like the tokenized minorities, like Jews and Asians, who disproportionately are educated and achieve good life outcomes. Another weird thing that's going on in this debate that I really encourage the chat to think about, and I actually encourage Marte to think about it as well. Mass Hispanic immigration is not going to wipe out Northern European white culture in a half century. The most that could happen is whites will become a plurality in which they are probably 40% of the population, and Hispanics would also be 30 to 40% of the population, and we would share this continent with some level of cultural integration. Which, by the way, I do think if you move to the United States of America, you should learn English and you should learn our history, and you should learn it from a pro-American perspective. But I'll also remind you that Hispanics are a European-descended colonial project. Americans, Northern Europeans, come from France. They come from Ireland. They come from England. They come from Germany. They come from the Czech Republic. They come arguably from Eastern Europe sometimes. Hispanics are Spaniards, and Brazilians are Portuguese who crossed the Atlantic and then mixed with the Native American population, and then also mixed with African slaves who were imported into this nation. If you're talking about the United States of America, they are probably not American in that sense of the word. If you're talking about America, the continent, they are American as fuck. And to think that we would just sit on the continent together without figuring out some kind of cultural power sharing between the two peoples is insane. It's going to happen. You're going to have to fucking deal with it. It is what it is. And I had fun. That's it. End of yap.
All right.
So fuck our values.
Thank you.
You think Hispanics don't share your values, Mr.
Yeah,
Rulus?
they don't share. They don't integrate. You said they.
All right, hold up.
They're not doing that.
So I just want to say first off, thank you to both the debaters tonight. And real quick, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, okay, make sure you not only like the stream, subscribe to the channel, but you also subscribe to the debaters, both found in the description. All right. And if you're liking the debates, you're going to want to subscribe because we do all type of debates over here: political, cultural, social issues, trending topics. Like I said, we did a Zelda debate. Anything we can clash iron over.